across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. I'm Mark Dolan. This is Morning Glory, and it's 3 minutes past 6. A big show coming up today. Breaking this morning, there's trouble in paradise, folks, as there is a all-out war at the top of government. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, throws the Prime Minister under the bus, insisting that he co-authored her disastrous growth-wrecking, pro-benefits, unemployment-fueling, inflationary budget. Plus, Rachel Reeves has the cheek to complain about pre-budget speculation, even though she's the first Chancellor in history to have leaked her own budget. Make it make sense. Meanwhile, Labour's still happy to experiment on our kids, rolling out dangerous puberty blockers. And Ed Miliband's net zero plans are expected to cost households further £500 a year. Insanity, ideology, economic suicide. And following his decision to scrap jury trials for all but the most serious cases, mastermind himself, David Lammy, is back with a plan to wipe the criminal records of children, even if they are dangerous thugs. And the scandal of the Afghan rapists mollycoddled and love-bombed in a youth prison. We've got the inside story. It is a shocker. So my priority for the next 4 hours is to get your opinions on the national television and radio airwaves. You can call the show 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Leave me a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. But at 4 minutes past 6, let's start with today's front pages and the Daily Telegraph newspaper. Falklands arms ban must end, says Javier Milei. Argentina is in talks with Britain to lift a weapons ban that could allow the South American country to purchase state-of-the-art military technology. Javier Milei, Argentina's president, told the Telegraph that negotiations have begun on overhauling restrictions that has held his military back since the Falklands War in 1982. What do you think about that? Is it water under the bridge with the Falklands? A peerage for women's champion Sharon Davies. Of course, she's a hero twice, isn't she? First in the swimming pool at the Olympics, and now as a champion of women's rights and as a bastion of common sense. Hate to say it, folks, there are just two sexes. You can't cancel me. It is the verdict of the Supreme Court, and it's also quite clear to anyone that's had a cursory glance at a GCSE biology textbook. There's two sexes, the end. Lammy plans to wipe child criminal records is the other story in the Telegraph. Childhood criminal records for thousands of people will be wiped under plans being considered by David Lammy. The Justice Secretary will review the current system in order to prevent people's childhood convictions from blighting their future job prospects. Lammy is considering simplifying the system to ensure that checks are proportionate to the crime after evidence that people in their 50s, 60s and 70s found that childhood offences such as stealing a bicycle or fighting in the street were still being disclosed to potential employers. Also, how about this? Europe warns Trump over Ukraine peace. Europe's leaders warned of a critical moment for relations with the US after talks on a Ukraine peace deal plan. Sir Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, Friedrich Merz of Germany called at Donald Trump to keep up their intensive work on ending the war. The leaders said they agreed that this was a critical moment for Ukraine, its people, and for shared security across the Euro-Atlantic region. But what they're trying to do is basically tell off Donald Trump, okay, push him around and throw their weight. Well, you've got no weight to throw. This is Europe, which has chosen the suicidal policy of open borders, which means that the civilization is under threat, and I agree with the Americans about that. This is a Europe that has chosen progressive social democratic economic policies, which has meant that Europe is in a permanent economic decline. And this is a Europe that hasn't invested in its military, can't even defend itself let alone Ukraine. Who are they to talk? Front page of The Guardian. Visitors to the US could have to reveal 5 years of social media activity. Hong Kong exiles hit by explicit fake letters. And an attempt to halt the doctor strikes with better offer. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, has made an improved offer to end the long-running dispute with resident doctors before the strike next week that threatens to bring chaos to the NHS as it batters a flu surge. Here's the thing. They may be offered a deal, a lot of money. They may still strike because the British Medical Association, which sounds like an organisation that's there to make sure that you're healthy and you get that sort of knee replacement that you're waiting for. No, the BMA is a militant political activist organisation, and I would argue is bringing disrepute on the medical profession. It's giving doctors and nurses a bad name, and it's endangering lives. Daily Express now, they cannot be trusted with Brexit. Keir Starmer was accused of handing our country over to Brussels as Rachel Reeves became the latest cabinet minister to hint at joining an EU customs union. Let me just say that there is no point in having Brexit if you're in a customs union because you don't have trade deals. It makes no sense. Plus, you'd have to pay into the system. It's a waste of time. Don't even go there. The Mirror newspaper, Labour housing pledge, £3.5 billion war on homelessness. The scandal of rough sleepers and families trapped in B&Bs will be tackled in a new £3.5 billion war on homelessness. Housing Minister Steve Reed vowed we can build a future where homelessness is rare, brief and not repeated. Here's how you fix homelessness. You don't need actually to build more houses. What you need to do is close the borders and end illegal immigration, because 50, 60, 70,000 people are coming to this country illegally every year. That's over 1/3 across the course of a parliament. Those people, many will wind up on the streets. That's how you start. And you go from there. You've got the newspaper now. UK set to turn back clock on Brexit and rejoin EU's student exchange scheme from January 2027, which is going to further inflate immigration. You're welcome. The Times newspaper, fresh deal to avert doctors' strikes, offers opportunity but not cash. Net zero plan to cost households £500 a year, and earliest proof of humans making fire found in the UK. Are they in the cabinet, I wonder? Daily Mail, stop Labour's grotesque puberty drug experiment on children. The Sun newspaper, exclusive, McCall hubby number 3, Davina weds in secret. Tiny bash for cancer fight star and stylist. Always good to marry your hairdresser. And the Daily Star, down-to-earth star. Champ Luke's £50 a week pocket money. Darts ace Luke Littler is so grounded he only gets 50 quid a week pocket money, says Arrows Supremo Barry Hearn. Lad after our own dart is what the Stars say on that one. Those are your front pages. What do you think about this? David Lammy wants to scrap the criminal records of children. Does that make you feel more safe? Let me know your thoughts. 03444991000. With me in the studio to react to the big stories of the day, historian and commentator Rafe Heidel-Manku. Good morning, Rafe.
Good morning to you.
What do you make about this story? Clearly, it's not great. If you've stolen some pick and mix from Woolworths in the 1970s, you can't get a job as a police officer. That's not right. But I'm really worried, given that David Lammy is the author of a plan to scrap jury trials, all but for the most serious cases, that this could be further salami slicing of our justice.
You're absolutely right. Once again, this is all about common sense, an attribute that obviously is in short supply in number 10 and around that famous cabinet table. Obviously, we know about David Lammy being an ardent defender of the jury system before he went into government, now trying to scrap it. Similarly here, I think, common sense is lots of people when they're young do things that they regret and which they grow out of later on in life. But when you're dealing with serious offences, of course, I think there is a duty on the government to ensure that that never does leave, because there are some things that suggest that there's a mental predilection for this sort of stuff.
Yes.
Think about the murders of Jimmy Bulger, for example, and others. And what we don't know, actually, is what is the definition of serious offences, because it doesn't look like it's going to potentially cover things like dealing drugs, for example, or things like this. I also think it would be useful to have a gradation of ages. So if you're under 12, then you get a blanket ban for most things, or under 14. But if you're over 14 and you're able to make an informed decision, then I think perhaps there should be less leeway in what is struck off and what is not.
Well, definitely. I mean, I think that the two egregious crimes would be anything violent and anything sexual that should stay on record. but perhaps petty theft might be overlooked.
Yeah, and with lots of people who've gone on to great lives have been shoplifters at some point on the school, walking home from school and so forth,
Speaking from personal experience there, Rafe?
Personal experience, but people I know have done that who shall remain nameless.
Did you pay for that Tesco meal deal this morning on your way in? I hope so.
It was Iceland for me all the way. But yeah, no, absolutely. I think there is, there is a lot of problem with people who did stupid stuff. Just think, for example, about some of the people involved who were children in the Southport protests. Now, you don't want that to be hanging over somebody for the rest of their lives, do you? So if that sort of thing can be erased, I think potentially it should be.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, overall, I think it would be a positive news story and a welcome headline. But given that it's coming from David Lammy, who's got no credibility when it comes to our justice system, then suddenly it's a red flag.
Calamity Lammy strikes again.
If he thinks it's a good idea, we need to go the other way.
Exactly, and that's what I said. I think we need to have clear definitions about what serious offences are, and then we can decide what's really going on here.
Yeah.
But everything Lammy touches turns to the very opposite of what gold is.
Well, actually,
it's too early to say what that is at this time of the morning.
At 6:13, and I'm going to contradict you. I disagree. Okay. In fact, I'm going to upgrade it. David Lammy is the only politician on the planet that's even wrong twice a day. Right? The broken clock. That's wrong twice a day.
There's one thing that's gold. He's comedy gold. He provides great comic relief to us.
He most certainly does, as does the Chancellor, who has decided today to throw the Prime... Not today, yesterday, in the House of Commons at a Treasury Select Committee, throwing the Prime Minister under the bus. There is trouble in paradise, folks. Take a listen to this.
The Prime Minister and I met 2-3 times a week during the budget process. That is not always the case between Chancellors and Prime Ministers, I recognise that, but there is a very close partnership between myself and the Prime Minister, and so we took him through all of these all of the numbers and all of the options, and we decided it together as a team, because that is what the Prime Minister and I am.
All right, so there you go. That is a code, isn't it? For this terrible budget wasn't my idea. It's been co-authored by the Prime Minister. If she's going down, which I think she is, she's on borrowed time, she wants to take him with her.
Revenge is a dessert best served cold. But what this actually is this is mutually assured destruction. You know, the term during the Cold War, if Russia and America attacked each other, because it is completely unprecedented, I think, for a Prime Minister to be so involved with what's going on in number 11 Downing Street. We know that after all the calamities and catastrophes of her tenureship, he's actually brought into number 10 his own economic experts to oversee number 11. That's not a vote of confidence either. So by saying this, she's actually reminded us all that actually Keir Starmer does have his hands dirty, because she can't be trusted in the first place to do the right thing. But he understands that his future is inextricably linked to hers, and so it's in his best interest to be a bit of that life boy. But if you're looking at Keir Starmer as someone to actually hold on to when the ship of state is sinking, I think given his popularity ratings, you might be holding on to the wrong person.
Well, that's right. Economic policy shifted significantly towards number 10 in the aftermath of the Halloween October budget. How ironic that Britain's first woman Chancellor should be replaced by a group of men next door at number 10.
Yes, once again, she has to rely on men, it seems, in this case. And this from a woman who, of course, famously took away all the portraits of men from number 11 Downing Street, saying this was going to be essentially a female-only zone. And now it's essentially saying, actually, I had to rely on a man's help to get me through this. Doesn't look very good.
Most definitely. And it demonstrates, in my view, Rafe, Sir Keir Starmer's political ineptitude, because the one thing you need to make sure of when you're Prime Minister is that the responsibility for the economy lies with number 11 and the Chancellor. Otherwise, you'd have no political cover. And so what Rachel Reeves done, rare for her, is she's actually done a great political manoeuvre. She likes chess, and I think it's checkmate to the Prime Minister, because she's forcing him to co-own this policy. What should have happened is that she should have had the budget. It's a complete disaster, right? It's wrecking jobs. It's annoyed everybody. He can then sack her in a few months' time and is politically protected. But he can't do that now.
No,
he's all in.
He has been tied in firmly into the Reeves calamity, and it doesn't seem as if there's a clear way of getting her out, which doesn't critically injure him as well.
No, and in fact, there's no love lost between the two of them. It's my understanding that they don't get on, and that she feels quite undermined by what's been happening at number 10 in regard to her policies at number 11.
I mean, that's always been rather traditional with the Labour Party, hasn't it? We remember the Blair Brown years very well. And the animosity and the barbs flying between that short distance from number 10 to 11 are quite famous. But never before have we seen number 11 actually admitting that they don't have full control over their portfolio.
Most definitely. Well, at 6:17 on Morning Glory, let me tell you that next up we are going to expose the Chancellor's wild hypocrisy. This is Talk.
We need to have a conversation about class in this country and not about the colour of your skin.
It's the Harris playbook, right? They have Beyonce, we've got Lenny Henry.
Little Lily would rather have a Lip Smackers lip gloss from aisle 3 of Target than a freaking whatever that ball roller was that Meghan was so proud of herself about.
We've become such a soft touch that our system is so easy to kind of work around and take advantage of.
Girl, you might be able to earn some money quickly, but no one's going to marry you.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:20, this is Morning Glory. Lovely to be with you. It's Mark Dolan until 10 a.m. So much to get through. And the latest story that we're looking at this morning is a plan by David Lammy to erase the criminal records of children, given it impacts their life chances later in life. Here's a voice note from Ian on that subject.
Good morning, Mark and Rafe. It's Ian from Home Firth. So, Mastermind Supremo Lammy would like us to expunge the records of children so it doesn't impact them in their later lives, but yet playground tittle-tattle can quite easily be brought up nearly 50 years later to impact somebody's life. Yeah, you see where I'm going with this? I'll just leave that there. Happy Thursday, everybody.
Listen, I'm very happy hearing your common sense on that voice note, Ian. You're so right. And we know what Ian's talking about, Rafe, the political archaeology in regard to Nigel Farage, of course, what he may or may not have said in a playground 5 decades ago. an effort by the left to destroy his chances of becoming Prime Minister, and yet a left-wing Justice Secretary seeks to erase the past. Make it make sense. Double standards, much.
Are you accusing Lammy and Labour of being hypocritical? Never, heaven for 10. Yes, exactly. I mean, you know, you couldn't get a clearer example of somebody actually having their current adult life marred by things that were said literally in the school playground. I mean, that should be an absurdity. And if I were Reform, I would be raising this point at PMQs.
Most definitely. Meanwhile, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has the gall, the cheek, the hypocrisy to call out concerns about leaks of budget and, of course, speculation pre-budget before the 26th of November. Take a listen.
I want to stay on the record how frustrated I am and have been by these incidents and the volume of speculation and leaks. And that is why I'm doing something about it, because we cannot allow this to happen again. A leak inquiry is underway with my full support, being led by the Permanent Secretary at the Treasury. And we are also conducting a review of the Treasury security processes to inform future fiscal events.
I mean, Rafe, this is like a burglar coming out and doing a press conference going, I think it's really bad that that house was burgled by me, I'm a burglar. This is the first Chancellor in history to have leaked her own budget 3 weeks before the budget statement in an hastily assembled press conference early in the morning in Westminster.
Yeah, completely unprecedented. You know, one can only imagine what a normal speaker would say about this in the House of Commons. You know, this is Pontius Pilate here, essentially washing her hands of something when she's up to it in her elbow, up to her elbows in all of this.
Yeah.
I mean, the audacity to say this. Also, you know, the devastation, of course, that this has caused to taxpayers as well. But if she's saying that the leak didn't come from her and everything else, again, the obvious implication is where else would it come from? Well, she just told us Number 10 have been actively involved in all of these discussions and negotiations around the budget. And we know that Number 10 leaks like a sieve, and that goes to the very top advisors around Keir Starmer. So what is she saying? Has the leak actually come from there?
But also, where does sort of speculation, which she's been fueling before the budget, and where does that start and where does the leak stop? The bottom line is that, you know, she has created this atmosphere in which we're speculating about the budget. It's hurt the economy greatly. It's massively impacted investment as people are concerned about, oh, there's going to be a mansion tax and, oh, there's going to be an income tax rise, most of which she's responsible for.
Yes, and remember, gilt yields are higher than they were under Liz Truss, after Liz Truss's budget as well for a long time. This is a woman who's caused untold damage, and there is no other way of describing the fracas and the craziness before the budget as anything other than official leaking. But as I say, there could be a case here that stuff was being leaked by Number 10, in which case, why is the Chancellor not taking the moral course and resigning? You could not imagine Gordon Brown staying in that position, or Geoffrey Howe, anybody staying in a position when you had someone actively leaking against them. And it just shows, I think, the lack of moral rectitude here, that she's much more beholden to being Chancellor than taking a principled stance. You know, Gladstone was the last Prime Minister to actually run the economy until Keir Starmer.
That's an interesting thought, isn't it? And look, the bottom line is that it is double standards. I think this is a political move by the Chancellor. What she's trying to do is distract from the unpopular budget and from the damage that she did in the run-up to it by focusing on these overt leaks. And of course, we know that the head of the OBR lost his job. Well, really, the wrong public figure lost their job, because it's Rachel Reeves that was the face of this whole project, and it was a budget which has destroyed growth, which is going to fuel inflation and unemployment and make life harder for my viewers and listeners.
Yes, and none of this stuff, none of today's headlines are going to distract from that harsh reality, the harsh reality facing all citizens, particularly at this time of year, at Christmas time, that £30 billion cash grab from the British public to fill allegedly a fiscal black hole, which of course didn't exist. This £20 billion hole didn't exist. We were told in one of the greatest lies to the British public that it was necessary to raise this money to fix broken Britain's finances. Instead, we realise it was a bung to the Labour backbenchers. Has there ever been a more expensive bung? It was a bung to create more benefits, to lift, for example, the child benefit, the 2-cap limit there. This was done for political reasons at huge cost to taxpayers. They aren't going to forget that. People who have houses through no fault of their own that now fall under the mansion tax aren't going going to forget that. They're not going to forget the breaking of a manifesto pledge by dragging so many average earning income people into a higher rate of tax threshold.
Most definitely. Daryl in Blackburn says, good morning, Mark. Rachel Reeves is so annoyed and frustrated at the budget leaks, she's got to read a script on how mad she is. Maggie says, Mark, please never put Labour and common sense in the same sentence. Great voice note, Ian says, Steve. And Joanna in Salisbury, good morning, Mark. By saying Starmer was totally integral to the budget, she has opened up the decisions were a political move to placate the backbenches. Slam dunk. What about this? Cliff in Berkshire. Good morning, Mark. Labour do seem intent on dragging us back into the clutches of the EU. Not only the Customs Union, but apparently the Home Secretary is going to introduce regional policing. Regionalisation of England was very much an EU policy, and as I recall, we rejected it. Well, Cliff rejected EU membership in that seismic vote in 2016, but it does look like this government is chipping away at the Brexit vote. What's your view on the mood music, Rafe, around what Labour are going to do with Brexit? The Prime Minister has denied that we'll be going into a customs union.
I think, they now see that their plan for economic growth in their eyes can only succeed if there is some sort of closer alignment with Europe. I think, we know full well that the EU want to ensure that Britain has had the most painful exit ever to deter other people from doing that. So whatever economic growth plans Keir Starmer may have with regards to alignment with Europe, Europe's going to have a very different idea of what the sacrifices are going to be on that front, because they do want to still ensure that we do have to pay a heavy price for whatever growth we have. They've ruled out the customs union, but who knows what other sorts of arrangements could be made there and what sort of sacrifices we'll see. We saw how easy it was for them to give away the fishing rights again for an extended period with no clear, obvious gain to this country. So the sell-off of Britain PLC, I'm sure, will continue.
There is no evidence that joining a customs union would boost economic growth, particularly as it hooks us up with and makes us dependent once again on a dying economic bloc.
A dying economic bloc. It should be said also, though, that Germany was able to increase its trade deals with and its exports to China despite remaining a part of the European Union anyway. So there are all sorts of arguments that you can make, actually, that even if you're in the customs union, you can actually increase your trade externally. But we are out of this union. A vote was taken on all of this. We chose to go for a hard Brexit. There were other options available to us, but now we do have trade deals with around the world. We have it with Australia, and India obviously is hugely important for us. America, we're hoping we get something excellent too in the future.
Yeah.
That is the future, the emerging markets. You just have to look at population demographics around the world. Europe is in crisis and free fall along with Japan, but it's places like Brazil and in Africa and in Asia, which of course have markets that are surging.
And it's not a hard Brexit, really. It's just a proper Brexit, isn't it?
Well, you can have a debate on that. There were some people who wanted Brexit to be a political movement only. I was in favour of Brexit for sovereignty. I would have said you could have had control over your borders in terms of non-European migration without leaving the European Union. I've been a Brexiteer since 1992 when I was 16. I was alongside Nigel Farage in that. It wasn't called Brexit back then, but you remember even Nigel Farage, before the vote was won, was saying we could potentially have a Norwegian-style arrangement as well. So I'd say there are different types of Brexit. We've chosen to go down this path, focusing much more on the economy than I think the British public were interested in. The British public actually were willing to make the country slightly poorer. For them, it was about immigration and the free movement of people. That was sacrosanct. People voted for free movement, and they voted essentially to stop European courts taking control over British life. Of course, there's one main European court that didn't affect. Unfortunately, we're still in that, and we need to get out of that as well. So I think if you actually did poll people on what their reasons were for leaving the EU, I think economy would have come probably a lot lower down than those other issues.
Well, the only reason why Brexit has been a so-called failure, which I would challenge, given the fact that we now don't have to pay £20 billion a year for the privilege of membership, which is an instant win. A future, for example, Reform UK government will, I think, glean the benefits of Brexit to the point where at the end of the next parliament, the idea of going back into the EU would be unimaginable, right? The Brexit is not quite the prize that people were hoping for because it hasn't been deployed yet.
You're absolutely right. The British people have been betrayed over Brexit. Let's be clear here.
The establishment hate it.
The Uniparty, the Tory party, and the Labour Party betrayed us on Brexit. I would say Boris Johnson was the biggest betrayer of all. The Boris wave of immigration, have the British people understanding Brexit to mean an end to mass immigration.
Correct.
We then had immigration going to levels that even Tony Blair couldn't have imagined, and it wasn't Europeans who were coming over. There were people coming over, I would say, from culturally incompatible lands, which has forever changed, or at least now has changed the towns and cities right across this country, from the old mill towns of the north down to the capital city. An unbelievable betrayal, but Brexit has not been a failure. You know, people forget, and the people on the left and in the Uniparty and in the metropolitan elite want to blame all of our ills on Brexit. I'm afraid it was COVID and the furlough scheme, it was quantitative easing, and it was the Ukraine war driving up energy prices. That has been the explanation for our sluggishness, because I don't see anyone blaming Germany and France's poor economic performance on Brexit. In fact, they're doing worse than we are.
Yes, indeed. Nothing sluggish about your performance this morning. Rafe Heidelmanku is with me, historian and commentator. At 6:32 in the morning, the scandal of Afghan rapists mollycoddled and love-bombed in a youth prison. That's next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 6:34. This is Morning Glory, and it's Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. Yesterday, a little controversy on air for my good self. I was interviewing Roger Bolton, former BBC executive. I described Keir Starmer as a wicked liar. He said he can't use that language. That's the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. I'm so sorry, folks. I don't believe a word this man says. Now listen, let me know your thoughts across a range of issues today. My number is 03444991000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Sean says, good morning, Mark. Every day this dangerous Labour government do something else to punish us. I haven't heard it reported, but you now pay income tax on your savings interest. Only found out because my tax code has changed. It's no wonder people are leaving the UK, as we're taxed to high heaven and treated like rubbish, while the left tell us we should be grateful to give our money to spongers and illegals. Sean, thank you for that. Well, speaking of illegals, a really worrying story which features in the Sun newspaper. Afghan rapists mollycoddled in youth jail. This is a true scandal, folks, and really requires further inspection. Game is up for justice. Two Afghan migrants who raped a 15-year-old girl are being mollycoddled in a cushy youth jail where officers played Jenga with inmates to boost their self-esteem. The two individuals involved, who are both 17, also have access to barista training and hairdressing workshops, plus arts and craft sessions, film nights, and so-called enrichment days. The only enriching thing that you could do is put these two men on a flight back to where they came from. What a shocking scandal, Rafe.
This absolutely boils my blood. And let's make one thing clear at the outset. They're in there because they claim to be 17. There's no evidence that they're 17. This is based purely upon what they've said, and they conveniently forget to speak English and say they don't understand the language when questions are asked about their background and where they came from. You could easily believe that they were 19 or 20 years of age.
Yeah.
And the conditions that they're living in, firstly, are palaces compared to what life is like in Afghanistan. Right? So
Correct.
By any measure, what they're doing now is they're living in basically the Ritz-Carlton of Afghanistan, probably higher than the Ritz-Carlton of Kabul. But even by British standards, they are living lives that actually, I would say, millions of British teenagers don't get their own room. These guys are living there comfortably. They've got Xbox, regular visits, phone calls. They play on they've got a desk and a laptop, TV, DVD player. Now, we already know that teenagers spend most of their time in their bedrooms anyway, so these chaps probably not be doing anything different were they at home. So what's basically, we just have a teenager's bedroom in a place where they can play table tennis, they can go to the gym 5 times a week. That's hardly a disincentive. That's hardly a deterrent against committing the sort of vile, outrageous things they've done. They should be kicked out of here immediately. You know, we need to stop not only mollycoddling, stop housing any criminals. Any migrant criminals must be deported immediately. Any foreign criminals must be deported. Any dual nationals who got their British citizenship after arriving here from elsewhere should have their British citizenship revoked. It's not rocket science. And of course, we have a big issue with prison overcrowding. We could create thousands of more spaces by getting rid of waste space like this.
Another national scandal. We've got a voice note from James on this story. Take it away, James.
Good morning, Mark. Good morning, Rafe. Now, I am considering leaving this country now. I probably will, because I'm absolutely speechless. The fact that these men can come over here on these boats and do what they do. Obviously not all of them, but most of them. Come on, let's get this right. Most of them are doing this now. And when are this government actually going to find a pair of balls and tell us how it is? Not one of them has a pair of balls to say what's going on. They cannot bring themselves to say what's going on. Utterly, utterly shameful. So I will probably be leaving this once great country.
Well, James, I hope that we don't lose you, but I do think that so many people like yourself are going to leave because they've had enough. Either that or a political revolution. But the issue we've got, the next election is going to be 3 years. How much more damage is going to be done, and how much more of this woke madness are we going to have to witness before change actually happens? Let's move on to another story while we're here. Venezuela has accused the US of piracy after an oil tanker was seized off the country's coast. Donald Trump announced the operation had taken place during a meeting of business leaders at the White House, telling reporters, "We've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, largest one we've ever seized." Attorney General Pam Bondi shared a video of the operation revealing the FBI, Homeland Security, US Coast Guard and Department of Defense were involved. She said the US forces executed a seizure warrant for a crude oil tanker used to transport sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran. Well, what has motivated this move? Let's get reaction now from US political analyst Charles Feldman. Hello, Mr. Feldman. Welcome to Talk.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Very well. Good to have you on the show. Why have the US acted in this way?
Well, this is all part of what is believed to be a larger plan, long term, and maybe not that long term at that. And that seems to be regime change in Venezuela. And a number of things have happened in the past few months that lead people to suspect that that is the ultimate goal. As I'm sure you know, the United States has systematically blown out of the water a number of small boats that it claims was transporting drugs or trying to transport drugs to the United States coming from Venezuela. We have the U.S. now a very large military fleet that is off the coast of Venezuela, large warships, fighter jets. And as that video that you're showing now demonstrates, the ability to even board large vessels at sea through helicopters supplied by the Coast Guard and the United States Navy. So all of this is leading, it is suspected, to, as I said, the ultimate outcome, which is President Trump wants very much for the president of Venezuela to, in effect, get the hell out of Venezuela.
I mean, the U.S. are being described and being characterized as pirates here. Is that fair?
Well, you know, the vessel in question was off the coast of Venezuela, but in what appears to be international waters. Having said that, it is the very same vessel that only a couple of years ago was apparently involved in the transport of illicit oil shipments to Iran. And because of that, it has long been suspected, this particular ship that is, of violating not only U.S. law, but really international law by supplying oil and other material to what is considered to be by most, I think, countries, and quite fairly, a terrorist regime in Iran. So if you look at it in that perspective, is it piracy? I don't know. I guess you'd have to ask somebody who is an expert in maritime law. Is it, however, fair play, which maybe is the better question? I suspect the answer to that is probably yes.
Does it not go against the MAGA agenda to interfere with foreign states?
Well, yeah, but you know, the United States has a very long history of interfering with foreign states, especially in that sphere, which is, you know, Latin America. We've been interfering in that part of the world, really going back to the Spanish-American War back in the late 1800s.
And this movement under Donald Trump wasn't going to be an interventionist one, we were told.
Well, that's right. He ran. You're quite right about that, Mark. He ran on the notion that, you know, he was not going to get the United States into a war. That his goal was America first. After all, that is kind of what MAGA is about, right? Make America great again. But you know, presidents, not just Donald Trump, but presidents before Donald Trump, have long ago learned that when you're president of the United States, you may run on a domestic platform, but you are going to almost inevitably govern on an international one.
Yeah. Is he after Venezuelan oil?
Well, that's a good question also. Is he after, well, look, first of all, we have now some Venezuelan oil on that ship. When President Trump was asked, you know, what happens to the oil, he said, and I'm paraphrasing now basically, well, I guess we keep it. You know, the United States has long had an investment in the oil industry in Venezuela. It used to be Venezuela, the largest exporter of oil. It isn't anymore. You know, I don't think so much the United States is interested in the oil. I think it is interested in regime change, but that goes beyond the issues of oil. I think it's an administration in Venezuela that the United States considers hostile, and that actually predates Donald Trump. It was considered that even under the Biden administration.
Most definitely. Let's take a listen, if we can, Charles, to the president speaking on this issue some hours ago.
In the seizure of his tanker. Well, what happens to the oil on this ship?
Well, we keep it, I guess.
Where's it go? What port does it go to?
Well, you have to follow the tanker. You know, you're a good newsman. Just follow the tanker.
Do you know where we're going?
Follow it. Get a helicopter and follow the tanker.
Is it true?
But we're going to, I assume we're going to keep the...
Okay, well, there you go. And here is Donald Trump remarking on an incident on Air Force One, his official jet.
You know, it's a government plane, but I like to take care of it.
Well, here, meetings this week. Interview this week.
Hello. Somebody's in there. Come on out.
I wonder whether it was the president of Venezuela trapped in the Air Force One toilet. Anyway, a bit of moment of high comedy there. Charles, how do you see this drama playing out?
Well, certainly in the area of the United States continuing to go after small vessels, there's no indication that that is going to stop anytime soon, although there are voices in the U.S. Congress that are really interested in investigating that further. In terms of seizures of Venezuelan vessels carrying oil, I think, this may be the first of more to come. I think the key is going to be, President Trump has hinted that there might be land action in the not too distant future. And by that, of course, I mean boots on the ground, American boots on the ground on Venezuelan soil. That would be the sort of ultimate outcome. But the White House has indicated there is some reluctance to do that because, sometimes those operations do not go as planned.
Charles, a delight to have you on the programme. Thank you for joining us on Morning Glory. Charles Feldman is a US political analyst. A very important message from Margaret in Yorkshire, who says, "Good morning, Mark. The two Afghan rapists should not be in a comfortable room. It should be a basic room, no gadgets, exercise yard twice a day and food. They should be left there to reflect on what they've done and not pampered. Why do we support the villains and not the victim?" Margaret, you're so right. Our system is broken. 6:47, this is Morning Glory.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:51, this is Morning Glory. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. So much to get through. Rupert Lowe, by the way, live on the show at 9 a.m. with some worrying new statistics around illegal immigration. The gift that keeps on giving, folks, the boat's crisis. When will they tackle this? A brilliant voice note earlier from a listener to the show who said he's thinking of leaving the country. Who could blame him? And how about this from Mick in Wallington? Good morning, Mark. How much more evidence do we need to convince dozy Brits that Starmer wants to turn us into a dictatorship before 2029? Daily lies back into the customs union, cancelling jury trials and elections, stuffing the Lords, purposefully lying about the economy, politicising the police and the judiciary, etc., etc., etc. Well said, Mick. Well, let's add to the list the medicalisation of children. Front page of the Daily Mail today. Stop Labour's grotesque puberty drug experiment on children. Campaigners last night began legal action to halt a trial of puberty-blocking drugs on more than 200 children. The NHS-backed experiment was branded grotesque by the Tories, who likened it to state-sanctioned chemical castration. The legal fight is led by concerned parents and a woman who regretted her own gender treatment. Rafe, when is this madness going to end? These puberty blockers should be illegal.
Well, of course, most people thought it did end. It did end with that decision to ban puberty blockers by the NHS, a decision that was welcomed even internationally, with others then talking about following suit. But outrageous state-sanctioned chemical castration is precisely the right way to describe what this is. I mean, we don't need a trial like this because we already know what's happened to people who've taken them in the past. That was the trial, and the harms that were caused from that, that was the reason they were blocked in the first place. We do not need this trial, but yet no effort has been made to reach out to all of those hundreds of people, maybe thousands, who've had their lives blighted by these puberty blockers. Why aren't the medical teams going out and interviewing those people? And what we know from this new survey, there's nothing scientific about this. They're going to inject damaging medicines into these people that could affect their future fertility, will affect bone density, will have all sorts of developmental issues as well, just so that they can fill out forms saying how they feel having had this treatment. What they should be doing is doing a trial on non-invasive techniques, cognitive behavioural therapy, mental health discussions, seeing therapists and psychologists, see whether that works. That's the test that I think most people would want to see, because we know, for example, under these new trial, 200 people, they will be open to people of no minimum age. This will come as a shock to a lot of people. You could be 8, 9, 10 years of age and be put onto this. Also, people who are autistic are not excluded. Now, people with autism are 12 times more likely to say that they have gender dysphoria, and many of those people grow out of it over their adolescence. We've seen a sharp decline nationally and internationally in children reporting themselves as being transgendered in recent years, because the fashion has begun to fade off. And yet we're doing something as barbaric as this, when we had many cases of lesbians and others saying that they were just simply confused, and they realised too late, as we had with the 15-year-old girl Kira Bell, who actually had a mastectomy and everything, and then regretted it all. This is outrageous, and Wes Streeting, if he has any brain and heart and conscience, would do everything he can to block this.
Most definitely, and we are paying for it. That's the madness. These people will become a burden on our health service, given the side effects of this treatment. It's just not something that should be happening to anyone that isn't an adult. I think it's unethical even for a grown-up, but at least you have self-determination when you're over 18. We have a duty of care as a country and a state towards our youngsters who may make a decision which is irreversible and incredibly damaging. This is hot on the heels of a story yesterday, Rafe, about an increase in the number of assaults on women in gender-neutral bathrooms. History is going to judge this madness in regard to gender ideology very harshly, isn't it?
Well, I think that something that people never talk about is the fact that we don't actually talk about transgender. It was transsexual originally, then it was transgender. Now it's just trans. And what the trans thing does, by just calling it trans, you also embrace transvestites. And transvestites are not people suffering from gender dysphoria.
Nope.
Transvestites, majority of them are straight men, have a sexual fetish from dressing up in women's clothes. And this changing of the terminology is, I think, one of the main reasons you do have a fear for women in these places, because transvestites, who are suffering from no mental illness apart from perversion, I would think, in the case of those people who are attacking women, are going in there with ulterior motives. And yet I don't see anyone discussing this.
Can I quickly ask you about a royal story? And it's Meghan Markle Markle, who has sent a letter to her stricken father. Thomas Markle Sr. is fighting for his life in the intensive care unit of a Philippines hospital. He's lost a leg through amputation in order to save his life. She's written him a letter. Is that enough?
Yeah, the bare minimum. We were told that her father was at risk of being in imminent death should the blood clot from his leg rise to his heart. And you would think at this moment, you know, when the king got his cancer diagnosis, Prince Harry, to his credit, got on a plane immediately and flew to see him. You know, this is Thomas Markle has never seen his grandchildren, and his greatest fear was that he would die without seeing his grandchildren. If this isn't a clarion call for Meghan to actually show those few people who don't think that she's duplicitous and disingenuous and a hypocrite with no heart, this should have been the moment to fly to his bedside, take the grandchildren there to at least meet him and hope for some sort of rapprochement. You know, the real test of someone's morality and decency isn't virtue signalling over the poor treatment of vulnerable strangers. It's how you treat those nearest and dearest to you. And that means your father, your family, and your friends. And by all three of those measures, I think most people would find that Meghan falls severely short.
Well said. Times newspaper front page, Rafe, net zero plan to cost households £500 a year. Ed Miliband's plans to get Britain to net zero by 2050 risks costing the country £350 billion more than a slower approach to reducing carbon emissions. And this is a guy that could be our next Prime Minister.
Yeah, why this man is still in government, I do not understand, because every time he releases something, it always flies in the face of economic growth. This was a man, remember, who made a solemn promise, a pledge, to put £300 back in our pockets on energy, to make it £300 cheaper, and yet all we get told are the increased costs coming down the line through net zero, through energy subsidies. You know, there is one of the reasons we have such low economic growth in this country is because we have the world's highest energy costs. Eliminate those energy costs and you will have economic growth because our companies will be more productive. This is not rocket science. Even worse, this £300 billion charge that's going to come in for the next 25 years, £500 a year per person. The worst part of that cost is coming within the next 10 years. Just as our economy is teetering on the edge, is so sluggish, we are burdening it with even more excess costs.
Rafe, very brilliant points you've made. I can't disagree. Ed in Stevenage, good morning, Mark. Talking of what more damage can be done by this government in their remaining tenure, given that they will never be re-elected, in their last year they will go on a spending spree, leaving the next government to pick up the bill. We need to get this lot out before the country goes bankrupt. Ed, I do agree. If they think that a Reform UK government is coming, they will perform and conduct a scorched earth policy. Be clear about that. Dave in Colne says, good morning, Mark. Regarding puberty blockers, the government should face prosecution from any child that's harmed by the grotesque experiment that is this madness. I'll get to more of your messages next. Question for the next hour. Is this Labour government wicked? You're listening to Morning Glory.
Your Majesty, Melania and I are deeply grateful
to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. The phrase special relationship, seen from American eyes, the word special does not begin to do it justice. We're joined by history and fate, and by love and language. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
Security remains the cornerstone of this special relationship. We have the deepest, most advanced defense relationship in the world.
As I said last night, the bond between our countries is like no other anywhere in the world. The United States and the United Kingdom have done more good on this planet than any two nations in human history.
We are working
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Two minutes past 7, I'm Mark Dolan. This is Morning Glory. Top of the morning to you. I hope you are well. A big show coming up. Breaking this morning, there's trouble in paradise, folks. War at the top of government as the Chancellor Rachel Reeves throws the Prime Minister under the bus, effectively blaming him for the tax rises. Plus, Rachel from the Counts has the cheek to complain about pre-budget speculation, even though she's the first Chancellor in history to have leaked her own budget. Do these people think we're stupid? Meanwhile, Labour still happy to roll out dangerous puberty blockers on our kids. And the scandal of the Labour MPs who are against the policy refusing to sign a joint letter because it's supported by a Reform UK MP. They don't get it, do they? Change is coming, folks. Bring popcorn. And here's a surprise. Ed Miliband's net zero plans are expected to cost households a further £500 a year. And following his decision to scrap jury trials for all but the most serious cases, mastermind David Lammy is back with a plan to wipe the criminal records of children, even if they are dangerous thugs. Also, we need a section on the show, The World's Gone Mad. There's a guy that's been fined 250 quid for spitting a leaf out of his mouth. OK, this is a pensioner. He's law-abiding. He's on holiday in Skegness, which is a very nice part of the world. Lovely place for a mini break. And a leaf blows into his mouth. He spits it out and he gets taken down by the authorities. Meanwhile, real criminals getting away with murder. And what about this? The scandal of the Afghan rapists mollycoddled and love-bombed in a youth prison. We've got the inside story. Rupert Lowe coming up at 9 o'clock with some worrying new statistics on illegal immigration. And in Dolan's dispatch, I got in hot water yesterday. I got in trouble, I have to tell you. I was sitting in for Julia and I thought it would be a quiet 3 hours. I got into a row with a former BBC executive. I called Keir Starmer a wicked liar. He said, you can't say that. You can't call the Prime Minister a wicked liar. So that's my question to you this morning. Is Keir Starmer a wicked liar? Is this administration wicked? I think it is because its policies are hurting the country. But did I go too far with that? Is the Prime Minister a wicked liar? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. And it's the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch. 7:05, lovely to have your company. And we'll kick off with a voice note from Andy on the wild hypocrisy of Rachel Reeves.
Morning, Mark. It's Andy from Birmingham. Hope you're well, mate. Rachel Reeves yesterday, it just proves what she was. Erring, umming through those interviews at that inquiry, saying that she was going to look at these leaks that you're on about. But like you said earlier, obviously Starmer was putting his head round the door every 5 minutes. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Don't you think that maybe he's gathered the information and she's probably telling the truth that she hasn't leaked it? Because he's probably just gone in Morgan McSweeney's ear, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. So it's been leaked. So that's where we are with it. But honestly, we've got to get rid of this government pretty quick. else we're all going to be going to the dogs. See you later.
Andy, I can't agree with you more. And here's the thing, right? I get two consistent themes on the show. First of all, so many of you are telling me that you're making plans to leave the country. Many others would like to if they could afford to and if it was practical to do so. And also, almost everyone is saying that we've got to get rid of this government. Unfortunately, we've got parliamentary democracy. They've got a massive majority. I don't see how we get them out in the next year or two, although Farage does think that perhaps a financial crisis could do it. Let's see. Let's get reaction to the big stories of the day in the company of former government advisor James Price. Good morning, James.
Hello, my friend. It's good to be with you.
So what about this, Rachel Reeves? You couldn't make it up. This is the first Chancellor in history to have leaked her own budget over the course of 12 months, who's complaining about government leaks in the run-up to the budget.
It's absolutely astonishing, isn't it? To put this into some kind of context, all the way back in 1947, the Labour Chancellor Hugh Dalton, on his way to deliver a budget, let something slip to one of the newspapers as he was on his way. I think he might have been asked a question en route. He resigned for doing that, for the shame of giving something away before it was delivered in Parliament. And now we get to a point where there was nothing that surprised the markets, that surprised the press, or anything at all in this budget, because all of it had been released ahead of time. Now, why is it that they do this? There's a lot of what in the horrible Westminster term you call kite flying. So you fly up a little kite and everyone looks at it and you see what the reaction is. So we're going to put up income tax, and everybody screams, it's so terrible you can't do it, as if they needed to leak that to test that idea. And so you pull that kite down again, and you do it with other things. And so everybody knows in the end what's going to be out there. Worse than that, some of her advisors, some of her special advisors will go around and say to journalists, by the way, this is what we're going to do. You feel free to write it up to dampen again market reaction and everything else. She's now denying that that's happened, but I've spoken to colleagues and friends in the media who say, well, that is a lie because we know this, and journalists won't give away their sources, but they've gone around confirming, yes, we've had stuff leaked to us. So this just fits the pattern of Rachel Reeves lying, which she does again and again and again. She can't help herself.
Meanwhile, she throws the Prime Minister under the bus, claiming that they co-authored the budget and effectively he's responsible for the tax rises.
Yeah, it's probably the one smart thing that she's done in her time in office. Which is to sort of tie him to her and say, right, if I'm going down, bub, you're coming down with me. And Starmer, as he does, so leaden-footed in everything, has totally fallen for this. Ahead of the budget, he said, I stand with her and all the rest of it. Now, what he should do is say, look, I trust my Chancellor. She's got all the 2,000 people in the Treasury working on this and all the rest of that. And then when it's terrible and tax rises have gone up and everybody hates her, then if you are smart and your own position is in as much jeopardy as caretaker Starmer's position is, then you can throw her to the wolves. The fact that he hasn't done that, I mean, the guy just doesn't have a clue. And, you would talk about wickedness perhaps a little bit. I wonder if it's more what Hannah Arendt would call the banality of evil when it comes to Starmer. He's sort of only following the orders of his civil servants and doesn't have a single original creative thought in his life, even to save his own skin.
Most definitely. Let's take a listen to Rachel Reeves, effectively, throwing Keir Starmer under the bus and making sure that he knows he co-owns the budget shambles. Take a listen.
The Prime Minister and I met 2-3 times a week during the budget process. That is not always the case between Chancellors and Prime Ministers, I recognise that, but there is a very close partnership between myself and the Prime Minister, and so we took him through all of these all of the numbers and all of the options, and we decided it together as a team because that is what the Prime Minister and I am.
There you go. Clear message, James. If she goes, I'm taking Starmer with me.
Yeah, absolutely right. But this is the problem. These guys don't seem to have any kind of love for one another in this cabinet. They're supposed to be united by their kind of, what I would say, a pretty evil socialist bordering on commie ideology. But all they seem to care about when it comes down to it, like any real good capitalist, is their own naked self-interest. So she's just in it for herself. You've got Ed Miliband doing the same thing. You've got Bridget Phillipson. You've got Lammy. All these just ghastly people who are in it for themselves. And Starmer, who, let's remember, he was elected only 10 years ago. Really, he was thinking, oh, well, Ed Miliband will win that election. I can be his Attorney General for 5 years as a nice kind of retirement gig before I go off to watch Arsenal or whatever it is he does, go and recharge in the mothership. And instead, he's accidentally, in a way, found himself having to kick out Jeremy Corbyn, and we've always got to thank him for that, but sort of accidentally finds himself Prime Minister by default of the Tories losing the last election, and is now stumbling around from crisis to crisis with not a single thought of his own, and these mad, bad, and potentially wicked people sort of leading him on and introducing his reputation in the process.
Well, speaking of wicked, got a big reaction to my question, is this government wicked? I discussed it with a BBC executive on yesterday's show. He said you can't use that word. Well, Gary says, good morning, Mark. Surely Keir Starmer stating at PMQs yesterday at the dispatch box that he saved everyone £150 off energy bills is an outright lie. I thought lying at the dispatch box required somebody to resign. The man is a habitual and compulsive liar. I can't understand why he's not been called out. What do you think about this debate that we're having on this morning's show? Would you go as far as to describe this administration as wicked?
It's a really, really interesting question. And I think that the problem in our politics for a long time has often been that the right has most of the answers and yet comes across as a result as cruel. And the left, therefore, is able to frame the right as wicked or evil or immoral or whatever else.
Because the right take the difficult decisions.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly. And you say, oh, well, you're cruel and the price of everything and the value of nothing and all that sort of hypocritical nonsense. Mrs. Thatcher was very good at framing her policies in moral terms, I think led on by her strong Christian faith. But she was able to say, no, there's nothing kind about keeping people out of work. There's nothing kind about keeping people poor. The only kind thing is to help people to help themselves. And she was, I think, the last person on the right who was able, or maybe the last person at all in politics, who was able to frame things in moral terms. And often it's the other way around. I think it's very dangerous to stray into that territory, lest, what is it? The good book says that he who is without sin cast the first stone. But when you look at some of the people in this, I think taking away an ancient liberty of jury trials that is over 1,000 years old, that seems a very wicked act to me. And certainly if we look at the Education Secretary, who manages to fly under the radar, her name is Bridget Phillipson. She confirmed yesterday that she will be continuing with a programme that will be chemically, and I'm sorry to do this at breakfast, will be chemically castrating children. I think all that Reform and the Tories need to do for the next few months is put that on billboards all over the country, that the Education Secretary, who's responsible for looking after children, the most vulnerable people, the future of our whole world, of castrating them chemically because they may be autistic and think they're born in the wrong body.
Yeah.
That is, without a shadow of a doubt, wicked and evil.
And in fact, there are a couple of Labour MPs who are what we call gender critical. They're concerned about this policy as well. They're against it. But they won't sign a letter which has been led by Rosie Duffield, independent MP, because a couple of Reform MPs have supported it. How petty, how small-minded.
Yeah, I mean, that's not evil, is it? It's just stupid and nasty and, as you say, short-sighted and petty. And there are some, I say some, Labour MPs who I think have signed this, and I'm hopefully the last person ever to compliment any of them. But you've got a couple, I think one chap called Jonathan Hinder, and by naming him, I'm sure the Labour whips will go and have a big go at the guy. But he's one of the few people, it seems, in that whole party to understand biological reality, or maybe reality more broadly. But it should always be putting the interests of the most vulnerable people, like children, who are confused and have been lied to about this sort of horrible gender ideology for years now, ahead of anything else. But we should all remember, 10 years ago, in the Labour leadership contest, there was a moment where Andy Burnham, and you remember him, said, the party comes first. And Liz Kendall, one of his opponents, says, well, the country comes first, Andy. And she got booed and she came last in that contest. So are we really surprised that this rancid little party puts its own interests ahead of vulnerable people like children?
Tim Cook says, Mark, is Starmer a liar? Well, does a bear poop in the woods? Sue, Sue in Huddersfield, good morning, Mark. You should be able to criticise the government at all times. They're meant to be serving the people. The Beeb will do and say whatever the government wants because they hold the purse strings. Scrap the licence fee. Carl says, Mark, you didn't go far enough. He's a traitor and anti-British. He is a complete lunatic. Mark in Norwich. Yes, this Labour government is wicked, Mark, and evil. I cannot understand why some people still don't understand that what we're seeing is a very deliberate sabotaging of our country. Well, I will say it sometimes feels like that, doesn't it? Hugo says puberty blockers are experimenting on children, unethical and contrary to the Hippocratic oath of doing no harm. James, a very good performance by Kemi Badenoch, leader of the opposition, in Prime Minister Questions yesterday. Take a listen.
Why are his own MPs describing him as a caretaker Prime Minister?
My own MPs are very proud. We've just passed a budget which protected our public services and our NHS. No austerity which brought our NHS to the ground. We've created the conditions for economic stability with the headroom we need. And Mr. Speaker, we're concentrating on the single most important issue for families up and down the country, which is the cost of living, by taking £150 off their energy bills. That's in addition to the £150 for the 6 million of the poorest household. We're concentrating on what matters to the country. She's trying to save her job.
Let me answer the question for the Prime Minister. He's being called a caretaker because everyone can see that he's lost control of his party. This lot are so busy trying to replace him that they've taken their eyes off the ball.
James Price, Kemi Badenoch, leader of Conservative Party, is starting to land punches. Is it too little too late?
Well, as a card-carrying member of the Conservative Party still, I have to say no, definitely not. I think that her decision to go quiet like a submarine for a year was definitely the wrong one. I think it was pretty disastrous in all kinds of ways, and we can see that from the polling. And whether or not it's too late will be determined maybe by the results of the elections in May and what happens over the next few years. The fact that they're doing much better now, that Kemi personally has found her stride, I mean, she has so many great targets set opposite her for her to whack every time, does make it quite useful. I think the best thing that's happening is, as Reform have risen in popularity, they've pushed the Conservative Party far to the right in a great way on immigration, getting much more sensible. And some of the people in Kemi's party who think that we should have had open borders are quietly and rightly shutting up now. But in the same way, the Tories are still the most trusted party on the economy, and the only people, again, who are talking about seriousness of cutting spending and things like that, and that is pushing Reform in a great place on the economy. So I think that having these two parties on the right for another year or so at least, competing with each other, is putting them both into a better place. They're both able to hold Labour to account in different ways. My only fear, above and beyond any kind of party politics, as I said before, country should always come before party, is if they can't work out either one party destroys the other or some kind of deal in some way, shape or form, because on current polling, if they don't do something like that, it's the only way this squalid little bunch of socialists will get back in. At this rate, if the right can sort its act out, there will never need to be another socialist government again after the mess they've made.
James, you'll have to get off that fence. Have a great day. Lovely to have your company this morning. James Price is a former government advisor. A worrying text from Russ, who speaks for many. Good morning, Mark. I prefer... Whoopsie daisy. Okay, I don't think I can read that out now because I've just outed him. I mean, seriously, I'm like the anchorman. Basically, it's a listener to the show who is thinking of leaving the country. He's a high net worth individual that makes a big contribution to the country, and he wants out. Who doesn't? Here's a question for you this morning. It is today's question. Is this government wicked? 7:19, you're listening to Morning Glory.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me Meghan Markle, because it's Meghan Sussex now.
Flynn has said, Samara, I agree with you all the time, but you're just boring.
Hi! I refuse to work for ITV ever again. Oh! What Just Happened? Fridays at 9 on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Morning Glory, and the calls and texts are coming flooding in thick and fast. Is this Labour government wicked? Is that language too strong? Let me know. 0344 4991000. Yes, indeed, says Reg. Wicked indeed. The government is truly wicked. Chris says, good morning, Mark. Streeting is pure evil. What he's allowing to happen to children regarding puberty blockers is so wrong. I detest when some people on Talk say that he seems like a nice man. Well, nice men don't abuse children on Frankenstein experiments. Linda in Deal says, good morning, Mark. Starmer and the whole of the cabinet are all wicked liars. It's been 18 months of lies, corruption, gaslighting and pushing their socialist policies. They are never answerable to any scandal and are systemically killing this country. This is by far the worst government ever. That is Linda and Deal. Stephen said, good morning, Mark. If you'd said Farage was wicked or Thatcher was wicked, the ex-BBC chap wouldn't have challenged you at all. The hypocrisy of these people is plain to see. They are the only ones who can't see it. Listen, get back to me with more of your thoughts about that. Is this government wicked? It's the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. and we will play you the Roger Bolton clip. But here's a voice note from Pauline.
Good morning, Mark. Pauline from Salford. Oh, you know, I dread turning the news on in the mornings because this government are just a liability. But don't they see that all they're doing is digging their own grave regarding ever being elected again? I've got friends that have voted Labour all their lives, will never vote Labour again. So they've absolutely annihilated the common sense people of Labour. They just won't vote for them again. And Jammy Lammy is waste of space, isn't he? Have a good day. Bye.
I do think Jammy Lammy could stick. Thank you for that brilliant voice note, Pauline. Let's get to a developing royal story now. And a letter from Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, has now reached her estranged father, Thomas Markle Sr., who's battling for his life in a Philippines hospital, having lost a limb to amputation. So she sends a letter. Is that enough? And will that make the bad headlines go away? Let's get reaction from Prince Harry's biographer, the legendary royal journalist Angela Levin. Good morning, Angela.
Good morning.
What's going on here? Do we understand that it's now the case that Thomas Markle is in possession of correspondence from the Duchess?
Yes, well, they think a letter has arrived, but we're not allowed to know what it is. I mean, she's told him that he can't actually show anyone. It's not her business. You know, she doesn't run him. She doesn't even find him. So I think it's disgusting, her behaviour. She will take a plane and go to win any type of programme, whether it's clothes, whether it's being wonderful a mother, anything like that. She'll be in a private plane, no problem, but she won't go to him. And it's very interesting to work that out. There's two things, I think. One is that she was determined to win for some reason, maybe that he allowed this photographer to take pictures before they got married, and she didn't like that. It could be that, or it could be that she felt that she was too grand for him. So she's either got that, or she feels that she just can't. She's too scared to speak to him, because why shouldn't she fly over? I mean, it's absolutely absurd. And she's using somebody else has done it badly, not me, blaming the male. And that's fascinating, because she says the male is behaving unethically. So I looked up ethically, and it's moral principles. Well, if anyone hasn't got moral principles, it's definitely Meghan. It won't go back before she got married, but the way she's treated the royal family, the way she's actually not allowed her children to meet their family, and you can go on and on for what she said, all the lies she said. So she's not someone who can complain about ethical behaviour.
Well, definitely, and she's angry with the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday, which, of course, the Mail on Sunday is a publication that the Duke of Sussex unsuccessfully sued a couple of years ago, had to settle at a cost of $1.5 million to him. So there's no love lost between the Sussexes and the Mail newspaper. And they're not happy because Thomas Markle gave a tell-all interview to the paper last Sunday. And the reason why he did is because the woman that has been there for him in his hour of need is Caroline Graham, the Mail on Sunday's, is she the royal correspondent, royal editor of that paper?
Yes. I mean, she's entitled to go along.
Oh, she's the US editor, I think.
Yeah, she's been friendly with him for years now. Why can't she go and talk? But Meghan says she can't go and see him, or she can't phone him, because somebody might hear it. There might be a journalist there who's listening, and she wants something private. So therefore, she's not going to do it. Now, anybody who wants to talk to someone who's ill in a hospital can speak to a nurse and say, would you mind just asking the friend, your journalist, whatever, to leave while I have a private conversation with my father? They'd do it straight away. So she's blaming anyone. She also refers to herself as Duchess. She's talking about her father, I'm the Duchess, right? Now, when she's on Netflix, she's saying, love her name, doesn't she?
It's true,
Meghan,
with love, Meghan.
Meghan, yes. So it's absolutely terrible that she is trying to be several stairs above her father. So she's but not for all the people that she doesn't know. I mean, you can't actually make that realistic. She must be furious because her PR are absolutely pushing her to be nice and to do something, but she won't, because she has to win the fight, which was many years ago, and she won't go there, and she won't even let him see the children, and that just breaks your heart, really. Poor man.
One of the nice things that she should be doing is paying his medical bills.
Oh, absolutely right, yes. But she won't do that. I can't believe that she'll do that, because she doesn't want him alive, really, does she?
Now, that's a very powerful thing to say, Angela.
Well, it is very powerful, but if she did, she'd be rushing there and she'd be trying to organise it. She would put him in a very good hospital in the USA so she can go and visit him. I mean, how can you leave somebody like that? Her half-brother and her half-sister don't have money. They're in terrible trouble now. They can't afford to pay anything. Is it coming from her? Absolutely not. She's supposed to be a millionaire, or, Harry's a millionaire. They've got loads of money. But actually, for her father, it's not there. And if you hear what she wrote to her father when she was in her teens, she thanked him so much for everything. She thanked him for helping her, for giving her the strength to want to be a journalist, to be an actress.
Yeah.
And all those things, it was a delightful letter. And then suddenly she doesn't want want to know anything about him. And I think it's all sort of hierarchy. She's too grand now. She's
Angela, and I hear you. I'm no cheerleader for Meghan Markle, as any viewer of my YouTube channel, which focuses on royal news, the Mark Dolan Show, will attest. It's a little harsh on the Duchess, though, to suggest that she would wish her father dead. Surely that wouldn't be what she thinks, and surely she would deny that.
Well, I might be cruel, but I just think that unless you try hard, it doesn't matter if she doesn't like him. But I think it's absolutely her duty to go there and speak to him and be kind and to help him.
Definitely. By the way, do you know, Angela, what may be in that letter?
No, I don't know. I don't know whether it's a loving letter or it's a letter for telling him off. It could be anything.
And now you've said that she doesn't want him to reveal the contents of that letter.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, he's not allowed to. And I'm sure he will, because why should he listen? She's not in control of him. He doesn't have to listen to a daughter who doesn't see him or speak to him for 7 years. So I find it's very difficult, isn't it? If it was a loving letter, if it was something, I'm so sorry about this, I really do hope you feel much better, that sort of makes me sort of sound even worse. But if this is, why did you let the publicity come out? This is not allowed, it's not ethical. She might do that. She can take either thing, or she can just say, I've been told to write to you, so here it is. I'm sorry to hear about it. Yours sincerely. You can't imagine what the letter would be, but you can imagine that she's using the name, Duchess, and calling all of us is called, to us, she's called Meghan. It sort of bores me over.
Well, indeed. Before I let you go, how damaging could this be to Meghan Markle's reputation?
I think it's hugely damaging because everybody feels that even if you don't like a parent, but when they've had such a terrible thing, he's nearly died, he's had most of his leg taken away, you can go back and say, look, let's start again, let's be kind, I'm so sorry about this, why don't I show you the pictures of the children? There's loads of things that you can do, but I think that people feel that she's got no right to do nothing, especially he doesn't seem to have done anything wrong. He looked after her while her mother wasn't around during her teenage years, and he did his absolute best for her. He adored her. And if somebody loves you, even if you don't, and they're so ill, I think you should go along and try and make things a bit better. It's not too difficult, especially you love taking planes all over the place to win. She has got the money. She borrows planes all the time, so she could easily do it. And I think it's that which she won't give anything. And that shows you how determined she is. It's absolutely, she has to win.
Prince Harry is not without empathy. He can't be happy about this drama, Angela.
No, I'm sure he isn't. But do you think she's going to listen to him? Of course not. They're not getting on very well at the moment. They do phony kisses so the public see, but actually, you need a kiss at home, not really just to prove that you're kissing. And I think that he's probably quite shocked, but he might not be. He's not in the right place to tell her what to do with her father, you see. She should know what to do with her father. She should behave herself and just be polite. She doesn't have to be all sloshy and, cuddle and kissing, but she should be there polite and say, I'm so sorry that you're in this state. If there's anything I can do, please let me. And he says, I want to see you. Okay, I'm coming. We have to change our feelings about people according to what happens to them, I think.
Angela, I completely agree. Sorry to interrupt you. The clock's against us, but a real delight to have you on the show in a growing royal drama. Angela Levin is one of the doyens of royal journalism. Of course, she's Prince Harry's biographer as well. Imagine that. Your father is stricken in hospital. He's just lost a limb to amputation. And what do? Send him a letter. What an insult. Is this government wicked? That's next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 7:38. Morning glory. Is this Labour government wicked? That is the topic of today's Dolan's dispatch at 9 a.m. Carol says, Mark, of course Starmer and his appalling clueless shambles of a government are wicked liars. They started their war against the people of this country as soon as they entered office with our pensioners and our farmers, the first to be hit by their jealous spitefulness. If only we had a legal mechanism to stop these dreadful, lying, wicked, incompetent people from ruining our country and its people. Carol says thank you for the show. Well, Carol, thank you so much for listening. Zarina says the British population are being done up like a kipper. Watching your channel has scrambled my mind. The issues you raise time and again make me feel worthless. It appears that anyone in government is crooked, anyone on the world stage corrupt, anyone crossing the channel criminalised. Please bring some good news too. British people like me are struggling to stay sane. Well, don't worry, Zarina, I got good news for you, because change is coming. The tunnel is always the darkest before you get to the exit, and there will be massive change in 3 years' time. There's going to be a political, economic and cultural revolution. Bring popcorn and you'll have ringside seats as a viewer to and listener to Talk. Well, listen, what about this? Rachel Reeves has effectively thrown the Prime Minister under the bus, effectively framing him as the guy responsible for the tax rises, very much the co-author of her shambles budget. Take a listen.
I want to stay on the record how frustrated I am and have been by these incidents and the volume of speculation and leaks. And that is why I'm doing something about it, because we cannot allow this to happen again. A leak inquiry is underway with my full support, being led by the Permanent Secretary at the Treasury. And we are also conducting a review of the Treasury security processes to inform future fiscal events. The Prime Minister and I met 2-3 times a week during the budget process. That is not always the case between Chancellors and Prime Ministers, I recognise that, but there is a very close partnership between myself and the Prime Minister, and so we took him through all of these all of the numbers and all of the options, and we decided it together as a team, because that is what the Prime Minister and I am.
Well, let's get reaction to this story. David Buick is a financial advisor and markets commentator. David, lovely to see you again. Welcome back to Talk.
Morning to you, Mark.
The Prime Minister has no political cover now for this shambolic budget, does he?
Not really. I mean, if you look at the construction of the cabinets and the entire Labour front bench, there is nobody with any experience at all. And rather, you use the terminology which many other has as wicked. I'd rather just say incompetent. Absolutely hopeless. They haven't got a single person who can speak up for business, industry and commerce, which, let's face it, is where growth comes from. And until they actually rectify that situation, I can't see it improving at all.
No, indeed not. How lasting do you think will the consequences of this budget be for the country?
Well, I had an interesting conversation with a very senior person at the CBI last week, and he made two very, very important observations as far as I was concerned. He couldn't see anything in there that remotely was going to give us any kind of growth in the foreseeable future. Now, one of the things that the Labour government came up with was growth in terms of our goals in life. There was nothing in the budget at all. And the worst thing that came up in that budget, in point of fact, apart from, shall we just say, there was an economy of the truth, you can call it an interpretation, whatever you like. I think the one thing that she did find out, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, that she had more headroom for the fiscal disciplines than she thought she had, but she wasn't absolutely straight with us. Now, she is the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and she is entitled to tell us what she thinks she should do, but she's not going to stop perception, Mark. And the perception was, I don't care what Professor Miles said from the OBR, he's a very, very distinguished gentleman, and he probably genuinely believes exactly what he said was the truth. But we, interpreting people, the public, the taxpayers, we were less than satisfied with what we actually heard. But there again, she was up before the Treasury Select Committee. The chairman of that Select Committee, Dame Meg Hellier, is a top lady. She's been MP for Houndsditch and Shoreditch for, I think, about 20 odd years, and she is the pillar of society. But that committee has got a large Labour majority. And she had what I thought from what I read, and I didn't see the whole thing because it was 3 hours long. Well, she got a pretty simple ride. And, you know, when you've got a majority of 161, you know, until the chickens come home to roost, you can do exactly what you like. And that's exactly what's happening. And I'd like to make, if I may, just a couple of observations that a lot of people have written in the press that the public at large and the markets are very comfortable with what Rachel Reeves came up with in terms of her fiscal room. And I would like to say to you, hang on a minute. We've had 5 interest rates cut since the government came in, and the bond market is almost higher than it was at the time of Liz Truss. And that doesn't tell me that that is a full endorsement. We need to get those rates down. But look at inflation. When Jeremy Hunt left in July of 2024, inflation was 2%. It's 3.4%. Inflation for food is 5%. Anybody who tells us that the garden is rosy and it's all going to happen, I'm yet to be convinced.
Well, indeed. How do you think things are going to play out for my viewers and listeners regarding the economy? Let's say for the next 12 months, David, what can we face now going forward, do you think?
Well, there are some green shoots of recovery out there. A lot of people have said smaller businesses are relatively encouraged, but they keep getting hammer blows. And the one hammer blow that they've got is this one of pensions now. When the government, anything above people making a contribution of £2,000 are going to be taxed. We can't afford that. The triple lock's got to go eventually. I mean, the number of big, large companies who've got provisions for billions of pounds worth of pension contributions is enormous. And that is another reason for discouraging people for employing extra people, because they simply can't be able to afford to deal with those kind of things. We're still feeling the effect of the national insurance contribution from a commercial point of view. And also, I don't know if your listeners make him laugh. I was absolutely overjoyed with it. Publicans are banning Labour MPs from going into their pubs. Why? Because of this 15% surcharge. And they're going out of business like 1 o'clock. It's the lack of sympathy, I think, for where business is generated from. But to answer your question, I think probably if we get 1.5% GDP during the course of the next 18 months, we've had a right royal result, because there's nothing on the stocks that tells me that the government is interested in growth and is providing the incentives to business, industry and commerce to go there. Okay, they want to take on all these young people. For apprentices, they're going to spend over £800 million. Brilliant. But from what I've heard, the number of young people who actually want to go out on a cold day to a construction site at 7 a.m. in the morning, not good. It's not part of their DNA. It's not part of their culture. I'll believe it when I see it, but I'm afraid I'm a little cynical.
A real worry. Lovely to see you again. David Buick is a financial advisor and markets commentator. Have a good day, David. Is this government wicked? Dan in Kent. Good morning, Mark. If you're part of Alarm Clock Britain or a pensioner, and you are part of Alarm Clock Britain, if you're a parent who wants the best for your own children, if you're a small business owner desperate for lower taxation to survive, ask these people if the government is wicked. Absolutely it is. George in Dorset, Starmer is wicked. He keeps banging on about 5 million more NHS appointments. Reality seems very different. What is the real number? Jules in London says, good morning, Mark. Starmer is a wicked liar, as he confirmed yesterday when failing to answer a question from Kemi Badenoch. In fact, several simple questions to which he gave no answer. This is a voice note from Lee.
Morning, Mark. Just thinking about the wording you mentioned yesterday on the show, the mid-morning show that you were covering, about the word wicked and how it was deemed for Keir Starmer. If you look at the definition in the dictionary, it actually says that wicked is it's deemed as morally unscrupulous as a politician. So actually, I think how you deemed it was very true. I think the government are very inept. I do worry that we've got another 3 years potentially of this.
Well, I think we all worry about that. Lee, thank you for your very considered voice note. Is this government wicked? It's the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch, but I'll be taking your calls on that. Do let me know your thoughts. But next up, the scandal of Afghan rapists mollycoddled and love-bombed in a youth prison. We've got the inside story. 7:48, this is Morning Glory.
Migrant crisis isn't some abstract story playing out in Westminster. It's hitting our towns, our streets, and our communities. Take Dover, the gateway to our nation. British families there watch dinghies arrive every day, with hundreds of young men stepping onto the beach as if it's an open door, while the locals struggle to see a GP or find a school place for their own children.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Morning Glory. It is 7:51, a very busy couple of hours to come. Rupert Lowe up at 9 a.m. with some worrying statistics in regard to illegal immigration. And today's Dolan's Dispatch, just before Rupert at 9 o'clock, is this government wicked? Well, Joe has messaged the show and said, good morning, Mark. I wouldn't say wicked, as that means good for young people. Wicked, of course, is a positive thing, isn't it, among youngsters? I would say they are malicious, spiteful, vindictive, vile, cruel, incompetent, destructive, harsh, ruthless, brutal, devious, petty, contemptible, obnoxious, hurtful, and mean-spirited. There you go. Joe in Bournemouth not pulling his punches. Jackie says, good morning, Mark. Of course, this communist government is wicked, just as all oppressors are wicked. Allowing people to put their lives at risk crossing the channel in dinghies is wicked. Allowing drugs to be brought into the country by these means is wicked. Refusing to look seriously at the rape gang problem is wicked. Everything they do is wicked. Keep going, Talk. Thank you so much for Jackie. Jackie, we will do that. A worrying new development, a shocking story. The scandal of Afghan rapists mollycoddled and love-bombed in a youth prison. This is an exclusive from the Sun newspaper. Let me just grab it from my pile of papers. And this will definitely shock and anger you in equal measure. Game is up for justice is the headline. 2 Afghan migrants who raped a 15-year-old girl are being mollycoddled in a cushy youth jail where officers played Jenga with inmates to boost their self-esteem. These 2 individuals who are 17 also have access to barista training to make a cappuccino, hairdressing workshops, arts and craft sessions, film nights and so-called enrichment days. Let's get reaction now from former Met Police Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville. Good morning, Mike. There's nothing very enriching about the crimes of these 2 scumbags.
Nothing at all, and the authorities, of course, tried to cover that up first off. But when we look at these prisons, they're just outrageous, aren't they? You know, we've got the left wing telling us that these people, 17-year-olds, are children, despite, of course, wanting to try to get hold of Nigel Farage for what he said 50 years ago at 15. But let's look at the treatment of these 2. Not only do they get Xboxes, they can have Maltesers and Haribo and whatever else. And it just strikes me that when I was 16 years old, I was a soldier, and we certainly didn't get any of those nice things at all. We were ruthlessly disciplined and taught how to be soldiers. And I would suggest that these youth offender establishments should be very much the same, because what will shock these 2, of course, if you went to prison in Afghanistan, I imagine it'd be a bit like Midnight Express, for those who can remember that dreadful film from the 70s. But it'd be certainly more cruel, and there would not be any of these ridiculous benefits that we see.
Most definitely. It's a real scandal. No wonder my viewers and listeners are so angry. They want to know, when's this madness going to end? Because this is a cultural problem, isn't it? An attitude towards these criminals and an attitude towards people that have entered the country illegally.
It is, and you can trace it back to the Conservatives were just as bad, who allowed it to go on, but the Labour Party, they actually believe in this. They believe that these youngsters are sort of victims of society or something, and they'll continue to treat them. You see Lammy now saying he's going to wipe out the criminal records of every youngster, which is a ridiculous move, because some people commit the most heinous crimes when they're young, and people should know about this. It's okay to give people a chance. You know, I spent my entire life helping young people and through voluntary youth work. But there are some people who are very, very bad, who need to be locked away, and the authorities need to know about their activities forever. And when they're locked away, they need to be locked away with bread and water and taught a lesson that raping somebody or murdering somebody, stabbing somebody is an evil and wicked thing, and you should be punished for it. You shouldn't be in the equivalent of some sort of youth hotel with all the facilities available.
Most definitely. And what about this other story that's just emerging as we speak? Mike, police will never be able to record 100% of offenders' ethnicities. Police will never be able to record 100% of offenders' ethnicities, despite the Home Secretary saying that the information should be collated, service leaders have said. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood wants forces to record the information in the wake of the grooming gangs scandal. But speaking as new police data on child sexual abuse and exploitation was published on Thursday, the heads of 2 major child protection programs cast doubt on whether this move will ever be possible. Your reaction?
It's utter nonsense, isn't it? Because what they're asking these people, what do you declare as your ethnicity? Well, we don't give a care. I don't care what they self-declare. You can sit in front of somebody and you can see what they are. You can see that I'm a white man. Why not just record that? But what it is, Mark, as you've alluded to earlier, there isn't the will to do this. Too many senior officers are bought into this multicultural dream or nightmare, whichever you're on, and they're determined that it will work, because the trouble is recording this data. It produces awful statistics that people don't want to know, on the left in particular. So I did some looking into this. You know, the police are forever criticised for being racist. We have a situation where, you know, young black men are 5 times more likely to commit gun crime, five times more likely to be involved in homicide and robbery. And what they don't want is these stats coming out, because what they don't want people to notice is the crime that noticing is the crime that Douglas Murray said. You start noticing these things.
Yes.
And more people around the country are seeing this. And senior officers in the police are deliberately trying to hide these figures. And the tragedy is there's lots of young officers on the streets right now trying to keep us safe. who are forever accused of racism because they just deal with what they're confronted with. They cannot help who's committed the crime. And they don't get the support of the senior officers and politicians, and they're thrown to the wolves. It is really an awful situation where everybody loses out.
You're going to love this story. It's made me laugh, really, although it's quite serious, Mike. Saying someone has an angry face could be racist. OK, Sandra Moody, a black teaching assistant, won a race discrimination case after students and staff said they were scared of her because she had an angry face. Employment judge Patricia Tujay said the complaints were based on negative racial stereotyping and failed to consider that Ms. Moody's supposedly angry face was simply her resting face. It could also be that she just threw people dirty looks, Mike.
Well, it's just, again, who do you think this judge who made this decision, who do you think these people vote for? It's like the immigration lawyers. They're all from the same type, and it will take such a mega effort if any other government tries to change it, because these people have wheedled their way into places of authority. We hear about this Fabian society. Well, Fabius was a Roman general who won by waiting. So these people are prepared to take their time, and they've been there a long time now, and these ridiculous judgments, you can see them. You can just imagine her now, this woman who made this judgment, this judge or whatever, he or she could be an NHS manager, a senior police officer, or a judge. They're all of the same ilk, and they all believe the same nonsense.
They do indeed. Mike, lovely to have you on the show. Common sense, as always. We'll speak soon. Mike Neville is a former Met Police Detective Chief Inspector. Another very big hour to come. It is coming up to 8 o'clock. Is this Labour government wicked? You're listening to Morning Glory.
Libya has become a major transit route for refugees and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa. And many of them come through Libya dreaming of getting to the UK, particularly from Sudan, where there has been a civil war waging for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many, many tens of kilometres have to be covered on foot by these migrants. And as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very limited resources. Once again, you know, people come in from charities, from NGOs, they use warm words, and the authorities here told me the only thing that we ever get is maybe a few toothbrushes and some nappies for the babies.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Coming up to 3 minutes past 8, top of the morning, I hope you're well. Mark Dolan looking after Morning Glory this morning, and a big 2 hours to come. Breaking this morning, there's trouble in paradise, folks. All-out war at the top of government as the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, throws the Prime Minister under the bus, effectively blaming him for the tax rises. Plus, Rachel Reeves has the cheek to complain about pre-budget speculation, even though she's the first Chancellor in history to have leaked her own budget. Make it make sense. Meanwhile, Labour still happy to roll out dangerous puberty blockers on our kids. More on that in just a moment. And Ed Miliband's net zero plans are expected to cost households a further 500 quid a year. And following his decision to scrap jury trials for all but the most serious cases, mastermind David Lammy is back with a plan to wipe the criminal records of children, even if they are dangerous thugs. Speaking of which, the scandal of Afghan rapists mollycoddled and love-bombed in a youth prison, given board games and given life enhancement classes. We've got the inside story. Rupert Lowe with some worrying new statistics in regard to illegal immigration in an hour's time. And today's Dolan's Dispatch. Is this government wicked? Well, George in Dorset says, yes, this government is wicked. Starmer is wicked. He keeps banging on about 5 million more NHS appointments. Reality seems very different. How about this from Ian in Gosport? Good morning, Mark. The word wicked can mean, especially in the 80s, awesome, amazing and very good. So no, this government is certainly not wicked in my book. The government prioritises self-interest, restrictions on free speech, is ineffective, is inefficient and has a lack of integrity. Sir Keir Two-Tier Starmer is far from wicked as leader of this train wreck of a government. I would suggest imbecile is a better word to describe him. Keep up the great work. Well, Ian, thank you for that. Is this government wicked? I've got a voice note from Steve.
Morning, Mark. This is Steve in Hearts. Are the Labour government wicked? This government came to office on a litany of lies, on a manifesto that was designed to catch the eye of people. They only said things they thought people wanted to hear, and they had no intention of living up to that manifesto or honouring it in any way. And now they're trying to end jury trials. They want to bring in digital ID. They're fundamentally changing the law, the justice system and the culture of this country with no mandate. Are they wicked? I'd go further than that. I'd say this is a rogue government, an illegitimate government, and there must be some way to remove these liars from office.
Emma has said this government are totally wicked, if not treacherous, taking the fuel payment from the elderly, pushing for assisted suicide, late-term abortions, enabling and continuing to allow boats of men breaking our borders illegally and letting many abscond. It just goes on and on. Digital ID, digital surveillance, watering down and ignoring our Christian roots that built this country, enabling China, giving away Chagos, lying about everything, destroying jobs and businesses, police state on free speech, jailing 10 times more than Russia do for free speech, failure on grooming gangs. Do I need to go on? Emma, what a brilliant text from York there. Let's get some common sense from Emma Trimble, broadcaster and journalist. Good morning, Emma.
Good morning, Mark.
I believe that you are a practicing Christian, is that right?
I am.
Is the term wicked to describe this government appropriate?
Absolutely, I think it is. I swear that the text that you just received there wasn't from me. I'm not that Emma, but I do agree with her.
All the Emmas are right.
Listening to you reading it out there and thinking amen to every single point. Yeah, I think this government absolutely are wicked, and I think what they're inflicting on the British public, I mean, you mentioned just migration there as one example and free speech as another. I think that is immoral. I think that the way that they're hiking up taxes and asking us to pay for and foot the bill of dangerous people who are coming in across the channel is wicked. And I also think that it's fundamentally wicked in a deep and profound sense that, you know, not just on things like the assisted dying bill, but also as we've seen in today's story, backing this monstrous, barbarous experimentation on children with puberty blockers. So I almost think that wicked doesn't go far enough.
Well, indeed, let's have a look at that puberty blocker story. It's absolutely huge today. It's the front page splash of the Daily Mail. Stop Labour's grotesque puberty drug experiment on children. Campaigners last night began legal action to halt a trial of puberty blocking drugs on more than 200 children. I know you're not a doctor, Emma, although you've got a great bedside manner, but could you explain to us what puberty blockers actually are?
Well, they prevent puberty from progressing normally. I think that is what puberty blockers are.
So you take a 13-year-old girl or boy and their body is going to develop so that they become a reproductive adult, and you stop that in its tracks. So
Yeah.
you're not going to grow breasts, you're not going to menstruate, and the boy is also not going to develop in a normal, healthy way.
It sets children on a pathway to a lifetime of medicalisation. It sets them off down the medical pathway where they will have their genitals mutilated in accordance with their dysphoria, where they will, potentially lose sexual dysfunction. But I mean, one of the points that has been made about this experimentation on children, and the experimentation has already been done because so many children have already taken this kind of medication. And I'm actually hesitant to call it medication because it's making them sick. It's not making them better. It has all sorts of awful impacts on bone density, osteoporosis, affecting brain development, ruining sexual dysfunction, causing infertility. It's the sterilization of children en masse. This is the sort of thing that history will look back on in the way that we look back on things like lobotomies. This is a trial, and it's important to add, that doesn't exclude children who have issues like, neurodiversity, autism. It also doesn't have a lower age limit. So you could have children, under the age of 12 who are potentially going to be on this trial. These are children below the age of 16 who can't give proper informed consent. They're also being fed this narrative that if they don't have these puberty blockers, then, they might, and their families are being fed this narrative that they might go ahead and kill themselves. It's a completely abusive way of treating young people who need help and support.
Before we let you go, Emma, I think you can give us an exclusive, because you are now becoming one of the country's most respected political commentators. You've been in this space for several years. You've gone viral on multiple occasions with the interviews that you've done on various media platforms. You're becoming a big deal, Emma Trimble, and you have just defected to Reform UK. Why?
I think they're the best chance that we have of sorting this mess out. I don't think, looking at the polls as well, I don't think that the Conservatives are going to do what we need. And I think that Nigel Farage as Prime Minister would do the job. So I'm putting my faith in Reform. And trusting that if they were to get into government, that they would be able to stand the best shot of saving us from this misery.
Are you worried that what you could have with Farage is a very charming politician but a snake oil salesman? Are you concerned that respected figures like Rupert Lowe are not welcome in the party?
No, I think, I certainly wouldn't describe Nigel Farage as a snake oil salesman. I think he's a really good guy. There's always a risk with a new party. This is totally unprecedented. The way that they're surging in the polls is completely unprecedented. There's always a risk that, once a new party gets into government, that, things might not go to plan. But what else are we going to do? It's a risk we need to take because the country is really, this is terminal, and something needs to be done now. It has to be done, ideally it would have been done before the next government, but it has to be done as quickly as possible. And I think Reform stand the best chance of doing that. And I trust Nigel Farage to deliver it.
Fantastic to see you again. My thanks to Emma Trimble, broadcaster, journalist, and now defector to Reform UK. These puberty blockers are absolutely wild. The idea that any minor is allowed to take them is insane. I don't think they should exist, by the way. This, to me, is a perversion of medical science, that they exist at all. Do you want to take a pill that's going to give you cancer or make your left leg fall off? Make it make sense! The world's gone mad! At 8:12 on Morning Glory, here's Sean with a voice note.
Morning, Mark. Sean from Grimsby here. This giving kids these puberty blockers, I want to know who actually thought this was a good idea. There must have been somebody, one person who said, you know what, I know what we need to do. We need to give kids these drugs. And this person needs investigating. And we need to ask the questions why they want to do it. Because that's the most important thing. You know, this is our kids here, and the government's pumping them full of crap. Oh, this is absolutely nuts, man. Great show, mate.
Sean, thank you for that. It is nuts. I've lost the plot. Honestly, the world has gone mad. So much more to get through, by the way. So Rupert, who I mentioned there to Emma Trimble, he's joining us. He's not she now. He's not transitioned. Don't worry. It's a knock off from Rupert to Rebecca. My goodness, that would be a story. Next up, we have the Shadow Education Secretary. Ed Miliband's wonderful net zero project is going to cost you and I an extra 500 quid a year. More on that next.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
Something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, do these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:17, it is Morning Glory. Rupert Lowe with some worrying new statistics on illegal immigration. He's live at 9 following today's Dolan's dispatch, in which I'll be making the case for this government being wicked. That's right, actually wicked. I'm making a moral judgment about a set of policies that are hurting this country and making life miserable for the viewers and listeners of this show. Ben says, good morning, Mark. Rachel Reeves has practically insinuated that by having a meeting a few times a week on the budget with Keir Starmer, that he's the person who leaked parts of the budget. She's throwing him under the bus. Reeves and Starmer are wicked. Christina says, hi, Mark. Starmer is not only wicked, but very dangerous, making us all poor. His whole front bench are also dangerous. Well, listen, let's get reaction to a major news story in regard to energy bills, and this is on the front page of the Times. Net zero plan to cost households £500 a year. Ed Miliband's plans to get Britain to net zero by 2050 risk costing the country £350 billion more than a slower approach to reducing carbon emissions. Well, a slower approach is one advocated by the Conservatives, and their Shadow Energy Secretary and Minister for Equalities, Claire Coutinho, joins me now. Good morning, Claire Coutinho. Your reaction to these statistics, an extra 500 quid for my viewers and listeners, hardly surprising.
Well, look, this is actually a bombshell moment because it's the first time that I can remember that one of our institutional bodies in energy is actually telling the truth, that this pathway to net zero is going to cost people more. And that has been our approach as Conservatives. When I came in as Energy Secretary, I changed the previous approach and we did a reset on net zero, and in opposition now we said we would take out the net zero legislation because it is making us poorer. And the thing we have to understand, and the thing the report shows very clearly, is that that would mean extra costs to the energy system every year for the next 25 years. Britain simply can't afford to have uncompetitive energy prices. It would just mean that we lose more of our industry, more jobs going abroad, and also people's living standards. As you said, you know, that hit to households' budgets, people can't go on like this.
Well, it's economically suicidal, is it not, Claire Coutinho? It also won't save the planet.
Well, and this is the problem. If you are advocating for climate change action, we are 1% of emissions and 99% are happening elsewhere. We would be the worst possible advert if we continue to have incredibly high energy costs for anyone in that 99% to do anything, because they would look at our country and say, your jobs are going, your energy bills are high, your households are poorer. Why on earth should we do this? So that's why I think it's very important to understand that what we are doing is now completely counterproductive, and actually our proposals are that the primary energy policy of any energy secretary right now should be to make electricity cheap as quickly as possible. That's why we've come up with a cheap power plan which would cut everybody's electricity bills by 20%. And I'm afraid Ed Miliband, who has been telling everyone, promising this £300 off, saying that his clean power plans are going to lower bills by 2030, has been leading people up the garden path. And what this report makes clear is actually this is going to cost a lot more, and it is not going to be good for our economy, and it's not going to be good for living standards.
It's bad for industry, and it's potentially a national security issue too, is it not? Because you need energy supply in order to defend yourself and to be independent as a sovereign nation.
I mean, two of the things that I think are remarkable, it's one of the things, you know, two of the things I talk about a lot, is we are shutting down the North Sea. There is no other country in the world that is shutting down its domestic energy resources. That just means we're going to import more from places like Qatar. It's completely and utterly nuts. And if you look at what we're doing when it comes to renewables, we're making ourselves completely reliant on China. So Ed Miliband has said every time you put up a wind turbine or a solar panel, it makes you more secure. But what happens when you need to replace that solar panel? You know, where are you getting these things from?
Well,
and
yes.
He's completely unable to look at that reliance that he's building on China.
Well, indeed, and you know, my viewers and listeners obviously struggling with energy bills, and they're going to rise under this policy, but energy security is national security.
It is. It is. It absolutely is. And that's why, actually, even when I was in government, I was legislating to protect North Sea licences. It's absolutely critical that we have our oil and gas supplies. We know we're going to need it. Even the Climate Change Committee admits we're going to need it in 2050. So if we are going to, we should use as much of our own as possible.
In October, however, you did admit that emissions would rise, carbon emissions would rise under your party's plan to scrap the net zero target and the timeline. The planet is heating up. Does that weigh on your conscience that climate change will get fractionally worse under a Conservative government?
Well, look, what I said is domestic emissions might rise, but actually I question what that means globally. The point that I was making is if you have more AI data centres here, for example, that means we'd be using more energy, our domestic emissions would rise. I actually think that's a good thing. Now, what does that mean globally? Well, if it's not here, it'll be somewhere else. So actually, if it's somewhere like China, which is 60% powered by coal, that's worse for global emissions. And this is the absurdity of our climate change accounting. It's the thing I've been talking about a lot. If a business doesn't start here, that's good in terms of the climate change bean counters, because it means lower emissions here. But if it just opens somewhere else, that's doing nothing to reduce climate change. It's just making Britain poorer.
Now, Theresa May, former Conservative Prime Minister, Claire, committed the UK to net zero in June 2019 when she passed a legal amendment to the Climate Change Act 2008, changing Britain's target from an 80% emissions cut by 2050 to a full net zero requirement. Do you now condemn Theresa May for that move?
Well, look, it was before my time in Parliament, but what I have said is I think that was a mistake, and I don't think we should have left it on the statute books for that long. And as I said, when I came in as Energy Secretary, the first thing that I did was a net zero reset to pull back some of those targets and to say we need to be honest about these costs. And now, in opposition, with Kemi Badenoch as our leader, we've said we'd repeal that net zero legislation because it's counterproductive. It's not helping climate change, it's not helping the planet, it's not helping our economy, and it is making us poorer. We need to be very pragmatic and have a grown-up conversation about energy in this country so that we can have all the benefits that cheap energy brings.
Was Theresa May's decision all those years ago unconservative?
I don't think we should be signing up to policies that we don't know what they will cost the public.
I'll take that as a yes.
Every policy has trade-offs, and I think it's not conservative not to think about those trade-offs.
There you go. Brilliant stuff. Before we let you go, you are also, as well as Shadow Energy Secretary, Shadow Minister for Equalities. Front page of today's Daily Mail, Claire. Stop Labour's grotesque puberty drug experiments on children. Tell me why you support a campaign to stop the medicalisation of our youngsters.
Well, this is a really grotesque trial that Wes Streeting and the Labour government are endorsing. Children, you know, as young as 8, some who might have autism, are going to be put on a puberty blockers trial, which we know the vast majority go onto a medical pathway, which means they are infertile, which puts their whole sexual function at risk. And how can a child who's 8 consent to something like that? What I've called it is state-sanctioned chemical castration of children, because ultimately that's what it is. These pathways have huge consequences, irreversible consequences for children, and I think it's absolutely awful that we are doing that to people so young, and it's not necessary. Sadly, there are people in this country who've been through these pathways already, and before the government even considers doing a trial like this, I'm not sure that they ever should, but before they even consider it, they should go and find that data of what's happened to those existing young people. And we know that one of them, for example, Kira Bell, you may remember her, a young lady that went on this kind of medical pathway, who had her breast removed, was put on, you know, cross-sex hormones when she was very young, came on to regret it, has been incredibly courageous in speaking out. She is now suing the government because of this trial.
Well, indeed, and, you know, my heart goes out to her for what she's been through as a result of this medical experiment. We've got a question running throughout today's show, Claire, and it's a simple one. Given so many of the policies are impacting the lives of my viewers and listeners and threatening the future stability and well-being of the country, is this Labour government wicked?
I mean, I think they are an absolute shambles. I think a lot of them didn't have a plan when they came in, and they have been buffeted about. I think if you look at PMQs yesterday, there were so many issues where Keir Starmer, he simply lied. He told us there were more teachers. There's actually fewer teachers than when they came into power, and they seem to be very, very blithe with the truth. And I think it is really damaging. The policies they're pursuing on energy, for example, that will make people poorer. And to go out and tell people that you're going to cut their bills by £300 when you've got no evidence of that, and actually now we can see from that report that we've been talking about earlier that actually this is going to add huge costs to people. I mean, how can you say you care about poverty and pursue a policy like that?
A delight to meet you for the first time. First encounter of many, I hope. Claire Coutinho is the Shadow Energy Secretary and Shadow Minister for Equalities as well. No denial from her that this government is wicked. Of course, you could argue she would say that, wouldn't she? This is a voice note from Pedro on our current administration.
Pedro speaking. Just listen to what you said about the scorched earth policy, that it's more than likely that Labour will adopt come their last term in government. Mark, if that is not a clear message to everybody, and I mean everybody, no matter what your ethnic standing is, what your gender is, what your pronoun is, what your colour, race or creed is, they don't care about you. They do not care. Why would a government that cares about its people or its voters, why would they do that? They don't care. That's why they would do it. And this is an opportunity to everybody to start realising and wake up. This lot do not care. And I'm not sure whether the Tories are any better.
Pedro, a powerful voice note. Keep them coming. 0344 499 1000. Sharon Davies, an Olympic medal-winning swimmer, of course, a total sporting legend, has become a legend all over again, fighting for women's rights and the reality of biological sex. She thinks there are men and women and nothing else beyond that is negotiable. Well, she's won a peerage. She will be entering the House of Lords, and she joins us live on the show next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You're listening to Morning Glory. Is this government wicked? That is the day today's Dolan's Dispatch. We'll debate that very, very shortly indeed. But we've got some developing news. Well, let me just get this out from Tessa, who said, "Good morning, Mark. This government is worse than wicked. They're evil. They're doing everything they can to destroy the country as we know it and turn it into a North Korean type of dictatorship." Not happy at all. Well, look, tune in for today's Dolan's Dispatch. It might get me cancelled. Good. Front page of the Telegraph newspaper. Some good news, finally. And it's Sharon Davies, who, of course, is an Olympic medal-winning swimmer, a legend in the pool and now a legend for women's rights. And if she understands, of course, the difference between biological sex, there are just two sexes, a view confirmed by the Supreme Court. Well, the supremely good news is that she is to enter the House of Lords, has achieved a peerage, and she joins us now on Morning Glory. Good morning, Sharon.
Good morning, Mark. Lovely to see you. Thank you for that.
Well, big congratulations.
Fast-moving show you've got this morning.
It is. It's very busy, and you've achieved and won a lot of accolades in your career as a professional athlete. What about this news that you'll enter the House of Lords? How do you feel about it?
Well, I got asked by Kemi and her team in June. So you have to sit on this kind of fairly big secret, you know, which is going to be a bit life-changing. I did ask after a few months if I could tell my kids and my dad's 90 and still coaching swimming, because I thought he really needs to know. So yes, I mean, it's nice that it's out. I obviously want to try and help and do good things. Obviously, you know, what you were talking about, understanding that sport is played by bodies and not with feelings, and that women should be entitled to fair and safe sport has been something I've been talking about a long time. But I'm also really interested in sport for kids and trying to improve their mental and physical health. I helped to get swimming on the national curriculum way back in the 1980s, and that is not happening. Half of our kids are leaving primary school not being able to swim 25 metres. So, you know, and my mum died from Hep C, and that is still not being properly addressed. You know, 30,000 people prematurely killed by Hep C that's given them by the National Health Service. So there's lots of things that I feel passionate about.
Yes, you're not going to be a single issue member of the House of Lords.
No, hopefully not. You know, I was listening to your question this morning. We've got some very serious challenges having us, you know, on our hands at the moment. And I think at the moment, the House of Lords is being able to hold our government in check a little bit. And it worries me, you know, that dynamic will change.
You've stood up for women's hard-won sex-based rights and biological reality, which has been eroded in recent years as a result of, in my view, the deranged ideology of gender identity ideology, which says that essentially gender is subjective, there could be 100 genders, and that somebody that's a biological male is able to be female and have all of the rights that come with it. When did this journey start? Was there a trigger point a few years ago when you thought this doesn't make sense, this is mad and it's wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. So 2015, the IOC changed the rules to allow males to identify into women's sport. And of course, I was competing during the East German era. So the 70s and the 80s, you know, where these young East German girls, some of them as young as 11, were given testosterone, steranabol. It made them seriously ill. Many of them have died, but for 20 years they were winning races, and they deprived, you know, 2 generations of all the medals they should have won. And I managed to get a silver medal, didn't the third one, but I had friends that came fourth behind 3 East Germans who would have been different if they'd won the medals they should have won. And so I just thought, I cannot let this happen to another generation of our young girls. And I was also worried about social contagion. You know, I was worried that the kids are being lied to, that they can magically change their sex, which they cannot. It's trying to get its tendrils into so many of our national institutions, you know, the NHS, into schools, into education, into civil service. And you only have to look at some schools where they've got 25% of the kids that are identifying as, you know, transgender, and you go to a school down the road and none of them are identifying. And it's often the children that are vulnerable. You know, the statistics will show us it's kids that are autistic, kids that are gay, kids that come from broken homes. For example, statistics, 4 times as many children in care will identify as transgender. So that tells you everything that you need to know, you know, and this government is ignoring it. And that is just because it's what I know, and I believe that women are entitled to fair sport. We get 5%. Of all the money in the world in sport, women get 5% for 51% of us. So we get a very small piece of the cake. And then to be told we couldn't even have fair sport was extremely unfair.
Absolutely shocking, isn't it? Do you think that you're...
But it's a bigger problem than just sport.
Yeah, apologies, by the way, for listeners and viewers, there's a little bit of an issue with the line, but we will carry on regardless. Sharon, do you think your views, your gender-critical position will be welcomed in the House of Lords?
Not by the backbenchers of Labour, no, absolutely not. But, but I think there's a lot of people in the Lords that want to listen to debate and argument, and that is the place for it. And for 5 years, we weren't even allowed to present the statistics and the facts and the science. And I think that's what's been terribly missing in all of this is actual stats and science, and so hopefully we can work with debate and we do explain why this is a problematic thing and that we need to understand better. I heard Dr. Clare, huge respect for Clare and obviously for Kemi. He's been talking about this for a very long time. And I know what Kemi was trying to do before the last government finished. A lot of things that she wanted to do, she was stopped from doing. So I have immense respect for Kemi Badenoch.
And the thing is, you've never been overtly political, have you, Sharon? But it is quite clear that the political left have embraced gender ideology. Why do you think that's happened? What a shame. We're having real trouble with the line to Sharon, and we're so keen to hear what she's got to say because she's just been awarded a peerage by Kemi Badenoch for her championing of women's hard-won sex-based rights. No doubt she will take the view that the left have embraced gender ideology, just like they embraced lockdowns, just like they embraced net zero. All of the bad things. Seriously, make it make sense. Well, look, congratulations to Sharon, who's going to be a very powerful and potent voice in the House of Lords. Congratulations, Sharon, and I hope that your wonderful father, who is still a trainer of swimming at the age of 90, is able to celebrate your success. Let's get some other news now, because first of all, we're looking at the education system with a concern that more teachers are going to go on strike at a massive, massive cost to the education of our youngsters who, let's not forget, during the pandemic saw their educational opportunities thwarted significantly. Let's get reaction now to the threat of more strikes, more industrial action in our schools from Stephen James, award-winning teacher. Hello, Stephen.
Hello, good morning, Mark. Great to see you.
It's lovely to see you. Thank you very much for joining us. So teachers have gone on strike outside their school over alleged gangs of male pupils trying to intimidate them in class and in the playground. Staff at Hayden Bridge High School in Northumberland are taking action over their appalling working conditions this Tuesday and Wednesday, with further strike days scheduled for later this month. Staff say, Stephen, that they feel unsupported by senior figures as they see little effort in being made to tackle these issues. Is behaviour in the classroom getting worse?
Look, I think what you've highlighted there in this particular school is, first and foremost, a real failure of leadership in a school. And the leaders of schools are so important because they set the tone. And if, sanctions aren't being enforced and pupils who are removed from class are sent straight back in, isolation is just a revolving door. Consequences, they don't stick. Pupils assume things that they do wrong don't matter. And leadership very much sets that culture, and school is very much a microcosm of society, and it allows you to push boundaries and explore who you are as a person. And if you never meet those boundaries, you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And if then when you get out into society, you were to behave the same way as you do in school, in your community, then likely you're going to fall foul of law enforcement as well.
Well, that's exactly right. And teachers do a good job. They don't get paid enough to put up with violent threats from students, do they?
No, absolutely not. And I'm no big fan of the unions. I felt during COVID they got very political in what they were doing. But I think in this case, the industrial action that's happening is ultimately a reflection of the inside of that particular school, and any particular kind of wider strike action. I think if it were to spread from that school, I can't see it, because individual head teachers in individual schools have the authority to enforce sanctions, enforce rules. But I think we also need to shift it away slightly from the school and the leadership and the teachers, because ultimately, parents they spend most of the time with the children to enforce rules and enforce standards. And if you've got absent parents, boundary-free households, and a culture where every sanction is treated as an attack on the child, and it just makes discipline completely impossible. And I've got a teenage daughter and a 10-year-old daughter, and there are times when you just think, oh, you know, you can kind of get on with that. But they're the times you have to stop yourself, because every time you let that slip, you know, standards are falling in the household.
Stephen, can you give my viewers and listeners a sense of what it feels like to be a teacher in the front line when dealing with aggressive, threatening and violent pupils?
Well, I can talk about primary schools, and you know, in that case, it didn't happen so much for me, because one, I was a man, and so children were very reluctant to get violent or aggressive. But I did witness female staff being pushed, hit, you know, even spat on, and those kinds of things. If that's starting in primary school, it only gets worse and worse and worse as you get into high school. And I'm sure you remember what it was like to be in school, maybe back in the 90s, like myself.
Yeah.
And and you know, things were rough, and ultimately you were brought back into line by the staff and by your cohort as well, because no child has the right to remove education away from other children either. And that disruptive, low-level behaviour is, if that's constantly happening, then it's going to ruin the potential of all those other children who are actually getting on with things.
Yes, well, on a rare occasion, I actually support this industrial action if it means that teachers feel unsafe going about their daily duty educating youngsters. Stephen, lovely to meet you for the first time. My thanks to Stephen James, an award-winning teacher and now broadcaster and commentator as well. Is this government wicked? You're listening to Morning Glory. It's 8:43.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:46, Rupert Lowe live on the show in 15 minutes' time, as well as today's Dolan's Dispatch, in which I'll be making the case that this Labour government is wicked. I had an on-air drama with a former BBC executive, Roger Bolton, on yesterday's mid-morning show. I was in for Julia, who's poorly, and Julia, we wish you a speedy recovery. And he wasn't happy that I described Sir Keir Starmer as a wicked liar. So that's today's Dolan's Dispatch. We'll play you the clip as well. Pretty explosive stuff. But what do you think? Is this government wicked? Here's a voice note from Alan.
Morning, Mark. Alan from Swansea. You're asking, is this government wicked? Yes. Evil? Yes. Incompetent? Yes. Name me one thing this ridiculous government has done for this country since they've come in. You can't name one. Can you name 100 things they've done to go against every moral principle of Great Britain? You'd be here all day, buddy. This is the difference. Trump came in, he said he would do this from day one. Bush. Remember Starmer? We've got the figures, and before we come in, we're ready to go. We got the ministers in post. This front bench, name one with a brain cell. They are absolutely out of their depth and destroying our country, pal.
Powerful words. Miranda is in Cumbria. Good morning, Miranda. Welcome to Morning Glory.
Good morning. I just wanted to say that obviously the Labour lot don't really like being called liars. So I was looking up Keir Starmer as a barrister. He represented the renowned hate preacher Abacadabra. And the judge, Justice Mittings, actually referred to his arguments, Keir Starmer's arguments, as fallacious. So maybe that's a better word to use. That's what I was
fallacious. Yeah, that's kind of a legal word, isn't it?
It is, yes. And with regards to them being wicked, yes, they are when it comes to puberty blockers. Because when you think about it, if it inhibits puberty, what else is it inhibiting in their brain? And they're using these children as lab rats, basically, at the end of the day. And they're not taking any accountability.
Most definitely. Miranda, you sound out of breath. What are you doing this morning?
I'm walking the dog. I'm up the field.
There you go, keeping busy. And are you worried about the direction of the country?
Absolutely, yes. There are so many businesses are being affected, and it doesn't take you back anymore.
Well, I know exactly what you mean. Miranda, I'll let you get to that dog walking, and I'm so glad you took the time to call us and express your concerns about the direction of the country. Miranda there, not happy at all. David is in Gloucestershire. Good morning, David. Is this government wicked?
Good morning, Mark. I don't think they're wicked. I think they're absolutely evil, quite frankly. I really do.
And why do you say that?
Well, any government that is prepared to sacrifice women, children in particular, into rape and murder on the virtue of a social experiment, which is mass immigration, I think is pure evil. And this latest thing you've been talking about this morning with this with the children being putting into puberty blockers. Well, you know what regime this reminded me of? They were in power in Germany in 1930s to the 40s.
Now, is that not a rather strong comparison there, David? No. Because, I mean, people criticise the left for calling anything they don't agree with, Hitler or Nazism or fascism. So is that not a little strong?
No, I don't. The more I hear about it, do you know what? If you read your history books and you read what experiments they were doing in the concentration camps, and then if you read this 85 years ago, about what happened 85 years ago, you'd go, oh my God, they did what to these children? And now they're doing it now, and they go, oh, it's progressive. Really? This is progressive? I'm sorry, but there is something seriously sick about you if you think this is progressive. I really do believe that.
It isn't progressive, is it? And it's actually a perversion of medical science to have medication that stops a young adult from developing.
Yes. I mean, what sort of person is it? I mean, what sort of person would even think that it's even sane to do it?
Is it strange? Is it strange that these items are even on the market?
Well, yeah. I've heard different people talk about what they did to the gay community back in the 50s and 60s with, medical treatment and that sort of thing. And we know what harm that did, And now all of a sudden, we move on 50, 60 years later and we're going, oh, well, let's do this again. Do they never learn?
Do they never learn? I don't think they do. David, you're shooting from the hip this morning. Thank you for a very powerful call and have a good day. Good morning, Mark. I'm not sure if this government is wicked, but an AI overview of wickedness includes a profound lack of empathy, manipulativeness, a pattern of causing harm without remorse, including habitual lying, gaslighting, taking joy in others' suffering, and refusing to take responsibility for their actions whilst projecting blame. Sounds familiar, does it not? Says Chris in Lancashire. Mark is in Manchester. Are Labour wicked, Mark?
I wouldn't say they're wicked. No, I don't think it's very helpful either. It's just more polarisation of our politics, more like America, splitting our country in two, etc., etc. I don't think they're particularly wicked. I think they're abject. I think they are good people with decent intentions, but I think the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I think to have people on describing Labour as like the Nazis in the 1940s because of the puberty blockers, people in this country will take puberty blockers if they want to. They won't take them. It's not as if someone's knocking on your door saying, I'm going to give your daughter puberty blockers because she's been aligned to be a boy instead of a girl, is it?
Yeah.
I mean, wicked is a very strong word. And what bothers me about our politics is we're becoming more like America, where you are polarized between one and the other, and then the algorithms on your phone just keep feeding you back the same stuff that you believe, and you just become more and more and more towards that side.
Is lying not wicked, though? For example, inflating the state of the government's indebtedness before a budget, before then realising that actually things were far better than the Chancellor had suggested, or a manifesto that was essentially a pack of lies. You know, we've had so much that's reneged on in that manifesto, including claims of being the most pro-growth government in history.
Yeah, but as I said before, you could lay that at any government's door over the past 20 or 30 years if you wanted to. It's just a matter of argument, isn't it? You know, if you have someone on who supports Labour, which I don't, but they would probably argue the contrary, wouldn't they? I mean, wicked is a word that, you know, if you're using semantics, I think you should save that word for other occasions, to be honest.
A very powerful point that you've made there, and I really appreciate it, Mark. Please call me again soon. Mark in Manchester, who is not a fan of this government at all, but also not a fan of using the word wicked to describe their policy agenda. Fair points, Mark, all notably taken into account. Craig is in Oxford. Good morning, Craig.
Morning, Mark. How's it going?
I'm very well. 8:54, Morning Glory. What have you got to say today?
Don't take this as a defence of the government, because I wouldn't pee on them if they were on fire. But the use of puberty blockers on children that are confused is completely wrong. But my youngest boy had a brain tumour when he was 2, and due to his chemo and everything, triggered his early puberty about a year ago.
Right.
So he's actually on puberty blockers to stop his body entering puberty prematurely, because it can affect it and stop shortly and cause issues with growth and his development.
Of course.
So there is a genuine use for them when they are required for a medical reason, not to be abused by children that are confused or to push ideologies.
So we should be grateful the medication exists, for an example being your young lad. How's he getting on, by the way, Craig? Is he doing okay? Is he through the worst of it?
Yeah, we're about 4 years in the clear now, so that's good. 5 years is normally the mark. He's just had his 18th MRI at the age of about 8.
Wow.
So, wow. But yeah.
And is he a smashing little lad?
He's wicked. He's great in the morning. He's got good humour. He's an absolutely great lad. So
Yeah, and he's got a great dad. Do you want to give him a shout out? Do you want to say what he's called? Oh no, you just broke up. You broke up. Craig, listen, we wish you well. And Craig has made an important point that puberty blockers can be a medication for a very specific condition that you may have as a youngster. And in relation to chemotherapy, quite critical for Craig's son. So, Craig, thank you for that. More power to you and to your lad for his ongoing recovery and hopefully a very happy and fulfilling life. Let's finish on whether Labour are wicked at this moment in time with a voice note from Sean.
Morning, Mark. Sean from Grimsby here. I listened to your show yesterday when you described the Prime Minister as a wicked liar. And if I'm honest, Mark, I think you went a bit easy on him. I think that was
a bit too nice for him. If I was going to tell you what I really think about the Prime Minister, you wouldn't even play this message because it'd be full of swear words.
Inappropriate for a family show. Well, look, Sean, thank you for that. I'm glad you heard my interview with an ex-BBC executive. We're going to play it in Dolan's Dispatch in about 5 minutes' time. You won't want to miss it. Plus Rupert Lowe coming up as well. But first, shall we have a bit of sport?
90 minutes in 90 seconds from The Sun.
And I'm delighted to welcome a good friend of mine, Lloyd Canfield, who is Chelsea reporter at The Sun. Lloyd, good to see you again. And by the way, what a result for City last night.
Good to see you too, Mark. I could get used to Lord Canfield, actually.
Yeah, whoops,
I think
sorry
that
about
suits me. That's all right.
Definitely,
yeah, huge result for Man City. A win over Real Madrid, a comeback win as well. Erling Haaland, I mean, he is just a machine. I got my sky blue jumper on today. Not that I'm a Man City fan in the slightest, but just in honour of his unreal goal-scoring record at City. And Arsenal obviously did really well as well.
Yes, indeed. They dealt with Brugge very, very effectively. Who is the most likely of the Premier League teams to win the Champions League this season?
That's a good question you've come to me with this morning. I don't think it's Arsenal, because although they're probably the best team at the moment in England, in the country, I don't think they necessarily have the pedigree of going there and performing on the big stages just yet in tournaments like the Champions League. I think even the likes of Chelsea have got that pedigree of going and winning tournaments. They've been proven in tournaments like this. And Man City the same. Man City, I just don't think you can deny their quality. And the thing that they've got over Chelsea and Arsenal is Erling Haaland, that proven level of goal scorer that will show up whenever required. So I think if I had to put my money on one of the three teams, I'd probably go for Man City. As much as I want to say Chelsea with my heart, I think I have to say Man City with my head.
Could this be Pep's last season in the Northwest?
Could be. I mean, in football these days, you can't predict these type of things, but I think he'll stay there for a bit longer.
I just wondered, do you think what we might like to do, one more Premier League or one more Champions League? He needs to go out with a bang, doesn't he, if he does move on?
He certainly will go out with a bang, and I think he might be here a bit longer, to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised to see him win a Premier League and a Champions League before he moves elsewhere, probably to the likes of Real Madrid or Barcelona.
There you go. Well, Lloyd, lovely to see you again. Lloyd Canfield, Chelsea reporter at The Sun. More to come.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Coming up to 3 minutes past 9, Mark Dolan with you on Morning Glory. Lovely to have your company. A big hour to come. Breaking this morning, there's trouble in paradise, folks. All-out war at the top of government as the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, throws the Prime Minister under the bus, effectively blaming him for the tax rises. Meanwhile, Labour is still happy to roll out dangerous puberty blockers on our kids, plus the scandal of Labour MPs who are against medicating children but refusing to sign a joint letter as it's supported by a Reform UK MP. Will these politicians ever grow up? Also, Ed Miliband's net zero plans expected to cost households a further £500 a year. And following his decision to scrap jury trials for all but the most serious cases, Mastermind David Lammy is back with a controversial plan to wipe the criminal records of children, even if they are dangerous thugs. Now, my priority is to get your opinions on the national television and radio airwaves. My phone number is 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Or you can leave us a voice note, a truly shocking story in the Sun newspaper. It's an exclusive. Game is up for justice. 2 Afghan migrants who raped a 15-year-old girl are being mollycoddled in a cushy youth jail where officers play Jenga with inmates to boost their self-esteem. They've got barista training to make a cappuccino, hairdressing workshops, arts and craft sessions. A true scandal. I'll get reaction from Rupert Lowe in just a moment. But first, Dolan's dispatch. Now, I had quite the moment with former BBC executive Roger Bolton on air yesterday. It just slipped out of my mouth that Sir Keir Starmer is a wicked liar. Bolton wasn't happy. Take a listen. He's a wicked liar.
Who are you talking about?
Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, is an outrageous liar.
You called him a wicked liar?
Yes, I think it's wicked. I think it's egregious what he's done. He said that he would raise taxes by around £11 billion. He's raised them by almost 80. He said he would smash the gangs when he knew that he couldn't. By scrapping Rwanda, the boats crisis is worse. He's a wicked liar.
What I would suggest happens here is that all of us, and you included, but certainly Donald Trump, are using language in a way we wouldn't have before, which encourages people to think there's a conspiracy against them, as opposed to very difficult issues which all governments have to deal with. I'm not going to defend the Labour government, as I wouldn't defend the Conservative government before for its record. But what I do think we need to do
I agree with you on
is
that.
be more respectful of politicians and the difficulties they face. We don't need to be that respectful of a United States president who uses language in that way. So the BBC should make absolutely sure it reports accurately, should apologise when it doesn't. But can we tone this down? We are in a dangerous situation for liberal democracy. There is a real question about whether it's going to survive in the United States. I would suggest that all of us try and understand the problems and talk in reasonable language instead of using language like wicked. Wicked is not mistaken, saying somebody's mistaken.
It's a moral judgment on a man who is a proven liar. Well, I make no apologies for describing Sir Keir Starmer as a wicked liar, because he is. That manifesto before the election was the greatest work of fiction since War and Peace. It was a fraud on the British people, and it contained more factual inaccuracies than a Gary Barlow tax return. Claiming you would just need to raise taxes by a few billion and instead raising them by almost 80 billion, a wicked lie. Saying you will be the most pro-growth, pro-business government in history, a wicked lie. Saying no taxes on working people, a lie. Making pensioners shiver in their homes to pay for unaffordable pay rises in the public sector, wicked lies. Pursuing the insane self-destructive madness of net zero as ordinary families struggle with their energy bills, pure wickedness. taxing education and hounding lower income families out of private schools so they lose access to their teachers, their best friends and their social community, all for a pitiful return to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Wicked. Talking down the economy with an imaginary black hole after the election, and then creating your own black hole, and then not admitting that you've created it, and lying about the health of the economy to justify a welfare splurge. Wicked. Handing over British sovereign territory, the Chagos Islands, providing China with a dangerous strategic advantage. It's wicked. Taking clothes and glasses and concert tickets from a billionaire donor, even though you've got a personal fortune your voters could only dream of. Wicked. Labelling concerned families worried about the impact of illegal immigration as far right. Wicked. Choosing ideology over common sense with the workers' rights package, which will destroy jobs and erode national income. Choosing party over country by bottling much-needed spending cuts and lifting the two-child benefit cap, making a mockery of the rest of us who think carefully before deciding how many kids to have. Wicked, wicked, wicked. Open borders, wicked. Digital IDs, wicked. A surveillance state, wicked. A cruel war on farmers, destroying jobs and businesses, assisted suicide, late-term abortions, rewarding the idle, punishing alarm clock Brits. Wicked, wicked, wicked. I'm sorry, Roger Bolton. I make no apologies for describing this administration and its leadership as wicked, because their policies and their lies are hurting the viewers and listeners of this show and are damaging the long-term future of this country, saddling it with debt, diminishing it, wiping out its cultural identity, making it a more miserable and less safe place to live. Sir Keir Starmer and his Labour government are wrecking Britain, and therefore wicked is the most polite word I can think of. The alternative words are far worse. 0344 499 1000. Is this government wicked? Let me know your thoughts. I'm delighted to welcome Rupert Lowe, MP, and the leader of Restore Britain. Good morning, Rupert.
Good morning, Mark. You're lucky to have me here this morning. I fought my way across Sadiq Khan's war zone. I had to change tubes once. Fortunately, my phone wasn't nicked, but here I am just in time for your interview.
Well, we're delighted to have you. Is this government wicked?
I couldn't concur more with what you've just said. I think this government says one thing and does another. I think it's got a Fabian agenda, which I did use that term in the House when I asked the Chancellor a question this week. I honestly don't think they either know or care about the damage they're doing to the real economy in Britain. I think they've got this agenda, Mark, to try and make everybody equal and make everything equal for everybody. And, you know, my favorite quote is Solzhenitsyn, who said, people are born with different capabilities. If they're equal, they're not free. And if they're free, they're not equal. And I think that, in a very short, succinct summing up from a man who basically spent a lot of his life in a gulag standing up for what was right, I think he's spot on. And I think everybody needs to absorb and think about that. So I think they're running a Fabian agenda. I don't think they know what the truth is. I don't think Rachel Reeves is qualified to be the Chancellor. I don't think Keir Starmer is qualified to be the Prime Minister. And frankly, Roger Bolton's cant, which you've highlighted just now, that's yesterday's game, and it's time people woke up and got real now.
What are the ideological roots of this Fabian agenda of which you speak?
Well, I think it's basically an agenda to try and undermine a productive capitalist society. It's got its sort of roots in a form of Marxist. And Keir Starmer, remember, is a Pabloist and a member of the Haldane Society. He's got all the badges of what I call Marxist sort of belief. I understand his mother imbued him with a lot of this stuff. And, you know, I don't think you can, when you watch what he says and how he says it, it's just not believable. So I think they've got a malign agenda. Most of the Labour Party are members of the Fabian Society. Its motto, or its emblem, is a wolf in sheep's clothing. And I think everyone should do as much research on the Fabian Society as they possibly can. It's not a good development for the country, and it's hollowing out the private sector, Mark. the private sector. We're losing all our rainmakers. We're losing all our sort of best brains, which is the most important thing. You cannot replace brain power. They're taking their wealth with them. And other parts of the world are benefiting. You know, Milan, you've got Dubai, you've got Greece, you've got Mauritius, you've got almost every part of the world benefiting from this. And it's not, they say it's not happening. It's happening at scale, Mark. So it's going to damage us long term if we don't stop it.
Well, indeed so. Another concern now, this was an embargoed story which has broken this morning. Police will never be able to record 100% of offenders' ethnicities. Your reaction?
Well, I think that's outrageous. And we've actually done a post this morning. I think we've got to actually look at all the data and work out why. And as you know, I've got the private rape gang inquiry that's been crowdfunded by over 20,000 concerned citizens. I'm afraid that there is a correlation in that case between Pakistani Muslim men and these rape gangs who've been operating throughout the UK. They're not in silos, they're everywhere. And from the research we've done, it's very worrying. So I think not to collect the data is a huge error. And what it tells me is they're worried about the outcome of collecting the data, which is going to tell them the truth. So as you probably saw, the government's appointed a Labour apparatchik to chair their rape gang, the statutory rape gang inquiry. I did offer my help. They have effectively declined that in the chamber this week. Mahmood said, send me any information I've got, but don't offer to meet her. Well, I can tell you we're planning on, we've got our hearings in the first 2 weeks of February, and we are going to have our hard-hitting report out by the end of March. And we're not frightened to talk about the facts. And if the facts mean we have to talk about ethnicity, then we have to talk about ethnicity. It's as simple as that.
And why is ethnicity important in relation to crime? Don't you just have good people and bad people?
Well, I think with the rape gang inquiry, and people like Emily Maitlis say, well, the majority of rapes are committed by white men. Well, that may or may not be true, because we actually live in, surprisingly, still a white majority country. But if you look at the rape gang activity across Britain, which is, by the way, linked with the taxis, which we've uncovered, this taxi registration in Wolverhampton, I think there is a correlation there with the lack of respect which Islam holds white working class girls in, and this is a very unpleasant business which has been allowed to fester for the last 25 years. So, look, there are good people and there are bad people, but there are crime trends, and I think you have to collect all the data to be able to work out where the correlations lie and actually what's creating the issues. If you don't have that, you can't make decisions. It's a bit like, you know, the whole of government accounts that I'm going on to talk about at the Public Accounts Committee in a minute. The fact of the matter is, if you put rubbish into your system, data is very powerful, but rubbish data is very dangerous. And I think a lot of the data that's now being collected by the state, Mark, is either deficient or it's based on unaudited accounts, incomplete accounts, and it is misleading. So if you put together lots of misleading information, you just end up with one big misleading mess.
Indeed. And you know that you mentioned misleading. What's important for my viewers and listeners is to have the truth. And you mentioned regarding ethnicity that if it's an aggravating factor, which, for example, in the grooming gangs, it was because these young white girls were targeted because they weren't Muslim and they were not from within that Pakistani Muslim community. So that's a racially motivated crime. Setting aside illegal immigration, most people of sound mind think that we've got to stop the boats. But there's a conversation to be had, Rupert, about the crime statistics around people that have also entered the country quite legally. There is an issue with ethnic crime in this country if you look at the numbers.
Look, Mark, we found that is the case in our Pakistani rape gang inquiry, which we launched because effectively the government said they'd have one and they didn't. They tried to silo a few areas which would not be representative. Nigel Farage promised one and didn't have one, so we've done it, and my team's done a great job on collecting all the evidence from the witnesses and getting the bundles ready. It's taken a lot of work, and that's all ready to be heard at the hearing. Look, the fact of the matter is, if you're going to make good decisions, you need good data. And the reason we got the Pakistani rape gang issue is because people were frightened of being called racist. They were frightened of actually speaking the truth. And at the end of the day, that happens when you get a monopolistic BBC, which starts peddling DEI, which has been happening increasingly since the Blair government. It's been embedded into almost every civil service department. It's been embedded throughout the country in all our big corporates. And what it means is people are frightened to speak the truth. And what we have to do is purge ourselves of that. We have to repeal the legislation which is forcing people not to confront the truth. It is the truth that matters, and it doesn't really matter how unpleasant the truth is. We have to face up to it. So crossing the street to the other side, as we know from the Bible, is a bad idea. And at the end of the day, we have to meet all this head on. We cannot move forward as a country until we allow the sanitizing effect of the truth to cleanse us, because I think we've been infiltrated with deceit. I think the country has become dishonest. And until we can actually have a frank conversation based on the facts and the truth, we can't really move forward. That's my view.
Most definitely, the truth will set you free. Rupert, thank you for dashing across the capital to join us. Rupert Lowe, independent MP and leader of Restore Britain. Your reaction to what Rupert has had to say. 0344 499 1000. Is this government wicked? Well, Rupert says yes, but a caller earlier, Mark, I think in Manchester, said that words like wicked are unhelpful, inflammatory language. So over to you, 0344 499 1000. This from Matthew. Hi, Mark. Great show. The Labour government isn't just wicked, they're sinister. They lied their way into power, no tax rises on working people, etc., and are now quietly stripping away centuries-old freedoms. Keep calling it out, Mark. Tommy says, good morning, Mark. So calling people racist and fascist is okay, but calling someone wicked is outrageous. OMFG, says Tommy. I can't translate that on a family show, but I think you get his point. Listen, a new developing story which is just coming in, and it's in regard to Crowborough, Crowborough in East Sussex, which is a community that's about to have 600 illegal immigrants dumped on an army training camp. Well, local residents have now launched legal action against the Home Office to stop it. Will they succeed? That's next.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:24, Mark Dolan with you all morning glory. Lovely to have your company. And front page of the Times newspaper, net zero plan to cost households £500 a year. Here's a voice note from Jane.
Morning, Mark. Could somebody just clarify this £150 off energy bills? Because from the last budget, I might be wrong, haven't the energy bills gone up by the £300 Ed Miliband told us they were going to go down by? So at the moment, we've got no money coming back to us. They've gone up by £300, and now you call him a prime minister if you want to, but the spineless person at number 10 is going to give us £150 back. Seeing is believing on that one, but is that £150 off the £300 that he's already put it up by?
Well, I'm glad you asked me about that, Jane, and I've been looking into this. So there is a discount for some people, right? It's the Warm Home Discount Scheme. And there have been some eligible households that will receive a one-off £150 reduction on their energy bills. It's deeply misleading to suggest that we've had our energy bills cut by £150. Only eligible households. Energy bills have still been rising. And the bottom line is your figure of 300 is about right. And it's amazing because wholesale oil and gas prices have come down, and yet our energy bills are going up, up, up. Why? Because of net zero, and we'll get reaction to that in just a moment. But first, residents in the East Sussex town of Crowborough are taking legal action against the Home Office and their decision to house 600 illegal immigrants in an army base very close to the centre of the community. Kim Bailey is a concerned local resident and part of Crowborough Shield, which is seeking to reject these asylum seekers and to get her town back. She joins me now. Good morning, Kim.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. Good to have you on the show. So what's the latest in your battle against the arrival of 600 undocumented, largely men, on an army base in your town? What's the latest?
So obviously we've served papers to ask for leave to seek a judicial review based on what the Home Secretary has done in terms of just ram-raiding this decision through without due process, no consultation, no impact assessments, no risk assessments, nothing. So, you know, it's right what we're doing, asking for a review. It shouldn't be, you know, the government shouldn't be allowed to just make decisions that impact on local people without any sort of consultation.
Most definitely. Can you describe Crowborough as a town and a community? What kind of place is it?
So it's a little town. It's got a population of 20,000 odd, and then it's literally sat on the edge of the forest. So you've got this kind of army training camp, which is not a disused training camp. This isn't an abandoned barracks. This is home to thousands of cadets. So you've got it just kind of on the edge of the town. So you've got the barracks, you've got the forest, and then you've got this town. But there's nothing here for anyone to do, to put kind of 500-600 men just on the edge of our town. And it's walking distance into the town with nothing for them to do is an absolute disaster in the making.
Well, it is a disaster in the and what are the concerns of local residents as how life will change should these men arrive?
So the fact that there's been no risk assessments, there's been no engagement, no consultation, no one knows. That's the key thing. You've got complete secrecy and silence from the Home Office, from Wealdon District Council. And when I say Wealdon District Council, it is literally just the leaders. Rachel Millward, who is Green Party, and James Partridge, who is Lib Dems. They have just been doing all of this behind closed doors with no consultation. Now, obviously, part of the judicial review is, you know, this kind of level of secrecy should be reserved only for national security. This is not a national security issue. So the way that it's being done, people just feel they need answers. They need to know what's the extra resources, what's the impact on local services. None of this is coming through. It's not being discussed. And that's the key thing for residents is actually they just don't know. No one's being told anything.
It's so egregious. It's so wrong, isn't it? I mean, what would you say to those that argue these folk have got to go somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. They've got to go somewhere. But this is not a disused army barracks. There are two ambitions of the government, which is to reduce impact on communities and reduce costs. Now, putting them into army barracks does not reduce the cost. The cost is like for like per person per night. If you think about the millions and millions of taxpayers' money that has to go into getting these army barracks up to a livable standard, it's actually a lot more expensive. And then to choose somewhere like Crowborough, the impact on the community is huge. It's absolutely massive. And when I actually met with the MOD up at Parliament, I asked them, why Crowborough? You've got so many disused army barracks that will not impact on local communities. Why are you choosing Crowborough, which is going to displace thousands of cadets? And the answer was, it's the one that they could mobilise the quickest. So this was about speed. So not about safety, not about impact or reducing costs. This was all about speed, and Ram raiding this through. There are lots of disused army barracks that they could use that won't impact on communities, but they're choosing speed over what is actually the right thing to do.
And how will families change their lifestyle if these 600 individuals do come to this army barracks? On a practical level, what sorts of decisions will people be making about how to live their lives that they currently don't have to in Crowborough?
So what we're hearing about from residents at the moment is the concerns around the schools. So you've got several schools just in one area. Now, Crowborough is made up of little twittens and paths that are completely unlit. They're tree lined. And one of the key things is that, you know, the crimes that we're seeing daily now on the TV are going to happen, but they're going to go unstopped and unheard because it is, you know, like I say, on the edge of a forest, it's completely parks with no lights. These children take these walks to get home after school. And we know it gets dark about 4 o'clock. So what parents are saying is there's no way they're going to allow their children to walk home from school. You've also got children that use the bus stop, which is directly outside the army training camp. Now, what the MOD has deemed is that it's not safe for all these cadets to be under the guard of 4 ex-military personnel. So it's not safe for them to carry on their training on site because of the asylum seekers, but it's absolutely safe for school children to be getting the bus, which is, you know, mere few feet from the entrance of the camp. So there's a lot of confusion as well because there's no impact assessments, there's no safety. So it's all about the safety of the town. That's the biggest concern for residents because no one's engaging.
And it's not a conspiracy theory. If I look at the pages 8 and 9 of the Sun newspaper today, we've got the horrific story of 2 Afghan asylum seekers who were accommodated at the taxpayers' expense in a migrant hotel. Who attacked a young girl. They're going to spend about 10 years in prison. So, you know, the real concern around the criminal activity of some of these people, not all of them, of course, is a real one. Have you had any pushback from certain quarters about your campaign? Have you been characterised as far right or a racist?
Certainly in the early days, so when we first started this and first started talking about it, we did get a bit of pushback from some people saying, oh, you're just a fascist, you're just far right. But I think as we've been able to explain what it is that we're doing and that this isn't about far right or far left, it's not about politics.
Yeah.
This is about a decision that has been imposed on this town without due process, without regard for services. People are understanding. So we don't get very much in terms of pushback from anyone, if I'm honest. There's the odd person, but we don't, generally speaking, no. Most people understand because the accommodation itself is not suitable for people coming from war-torn countries. You're putting them into a 360 simulated war zone because you've got shooting ranges all around that camp. It's just wrong on every level.
You mentioned it is 20,000 local residents. Roughly, do you think, what sort of percentage of those living in Crowborough would be against this move, do you think?
I would say 99.999%.
Wow.
I think you've got one, maybe 2 people that are saying actually they've got to go somewhere. But when I've actually spoke to them and I've said, have you spoke to Care for Calais? Have you spoke to any of the other charities? Because they too are against this. They are also saying this is inhumane treatment of asylum seekers. So whichever way you look at it, the argument is it's just not okay. It's not suitable.
No, and it's interesting that it's happened in East Sussex in Crowborough, which is not, if we're honest, a sort of hotbed of Tory or Reform UK support, and yet the residents have had enough and they're saying no.
Yeah, I mean, it's Lib Dem and Green local council. We're under a Tory MP, so you've got a real mix here. But the feeling now is that people will be considering wider politics in terms of how they vote for the future.
Wow. Yeah, and I think you mean by that code for perhaps Reform and the Tories. It's interesting, isn't it, Kim? I mean, in the end, you know, we need to stop these illegal boat crossings, don't we? This is the source of the issue. We can all agree that these folks are trying to make a better life. It's something that you would do. It's something that I would do. But the border's there for a reason. And, you know, the boat crossings, economic, national security and humanitarian disaster. Some people die in those boat crossings. So the issue's got to stop. And do you think, therefore, when communities that might not be predisposed to a more firm border strategy are having to think again if they experience the consequences directly?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people are becoming more aware of national issues. I mean, we've been in a little sleepy town where people have voted to protect the forest and not thought about wider impacts in terms of how they vote. That is certainly something that is changing here in Crowborough. People are becoming a lot more interested in national politics.
Yeah.
So I think the whole temperature is going to change in terms of moving forward.
Well, I think
the
you're
boat
right.
crossings.
Yeah. Go on.
Sorry, it's obviously a national issue. It's a political issue, but what a lot of people do feel, and you know, whether I agree or not, I'm not sure. I'd have to look at it a bit more. But it's actually putting the processing centre into Calais. Therefore, anyone who does cross the border is illegal and can be returned. I do believe that there was some talks around setting up a processing centre in Calais, but I don't know too much about that.
Yes, I just wonder whether the chattering classes of Hampstead, Highgate and Islington would think twice about an open borders policy, Kim, if more migrant hotels were in their neighbourhood or migrants coming to an army base camp. Kim, wish you well in the campaign. Do keep us updated on what's happening. You spoke very well this morning. We're grateful for your time. Kim Bailey is part of Crowborough Shield, which is essentially pushing back on a Home Office decision to house 600 migrants in a local army training centre. That was Kim Bailey. Thank you, Kim, for that. Michael's in Lancashire. Good morning, Michael. Welcome to Morning Glory.
Morning, Mark. Morning, everyone.
Now, what's on your mind this morning, Michael?
Yeah, I'm an immigrant. You could tell by my accent.
You've got a lovely accent. You could do voiceovers, Michael.
Thank you. And I'm concerned, actually. We left our own country to the UK for better life, to live, raise family, enjoy our lives. But today, some of the things we see here in the UK is frightening. One of these, the new one, is these poverty blockers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not something you want to think of. I've got 2 daughters, and then I'm scared now for these girls to go into school and be taught some of these things you think you can never hear of in a Western world. But it is here. Look at the immigration issue. Like I said, I'm an immigrant myself. I've been here for 6 years plus. And between then and now, I'm a CQC registered manager. I support individuals, vulnerable individuals. I'm happy doing so. I earn a living from doing so. I don't go to benefit. I don't earn benefits. I earn my money. I work hard and I earn this money.
Yeah.
What is the government doing protecting individuals like me? Working hard. With the majority of the people in the populace concerned about immigrants, the government should do more for people like me that work hard, earn money, raise family.
Yeah.
I pay taxes, but the government is failing on all fronts. Policy somersault here and there. I mean, to the general populace, fight for your country. I've got a country back home. I can return home sometime, someday. You've got no other place to fight for. Fight now. Fight for this country. It is worth it.
Michael, what an incredible call. Michael, an immigrant to this country. He works hard. He pays his taxes. As you can hear, he speaks the language beautifully with that lovely baritone of his. And he's telling Brits, you've got to fight for your country. And this confirms a thought that I've had for a long time, which is that if there is big political change in 2 or 3 or 4 years' time, it will be a multi-ethnic vote that supports a change in this country, because there are people from all of our communities, ethnic and non-ethnic, who are not happy about the direction of the country, not happy about suicidal net zero, not happy about open borders, not happy about woke madness in our public institutions. Change is coming, folks. Bring popcorn. Michael, thank you for a brilliant and articulate call. This is Morning Glory. More to come.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Morning Glory, a very, very busy show it's been. Thank you so much for the calls, the texts, the voice notes and much beyond. I'll be back tomorrow from 6 till 10. Do join me. Bit of a marathon session, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Lovely to have your company. Of course, there's so much more to come. Big opinions, big names, big guests and Dolan's dispatch as always. Is this government wicked? This is a voice note from Eric.
Morning, Mark. Well, in order to be wicked, you've got to be competent. And unfortunately, this Labour government is far from competent. They think they're doing the best thing in the world for the British people, when all they're really doing is hurting everybody from the bottom to the top. The only thing they can do is jog on and let somebody else into the country that can obviously run it, because this Labour Party, none of them have got a clue. Have the best day possible and have a good Christmas.
You too, Merry Christmas, Eric. I don't think it's too soon to be wishing people a Merry Christmas, and thank you for that brilliant voice note. I 100% agree with you. There is a counter-argument, by the way, and it's the following, which is that Labour were elected a year and a half ago on a massive mandate after what they consider to have been 14 years of Tory rule. It was the Conservatives that opened the borders with legal net migration of up to 1 million people a year, which Starmer quite rightly described as a failed open borders experiment. You could argue that the boats crisis was something that happened on the watch of the Tories. They did nothing to quell the flow of people entering the country illegally. The madness of net zero, the cost of it, poorly executed policies, bad economic policies, all of which can be laid at the Tories' door. That is Labour's argument. Their argument is it's going to take a couple of years to fix the country. It's going to take a while to restore our economy, fix the foundations and invest in our broken public services. That's Labour's mandate, and they stand proudly by it. I think one thing we can say is whether they're wicked or not, we'll be able to judge them at the next election. It's all about opinions, of course. And what about this in the Times newspaper? Net zero plan to cost households £500 a year. Here's a voice note from Sharon.
Morning, Mark. About net zero and Ed Miliband, how is it that one man, I'm sure there's supposed to be a parliament here, How comes one man is making all these catastrophic decisions on behalf of the country? This should be something that's looked into outside of Parliament, because it's a necessity for everybody in this country to have. Why are we letting this one man in charge of the only thing that can keep us alive, energy?
Sharon, you're so right about that. And this is a man who is the bookies' favourite to be the next Prime Minister of this country. So if you think, Sharon, there's going to be common sense on net zero, be very afraid if Miliband gets in. Andrew Montford is the director of Net Zero Watch. Good morning, Andrew. What do you think will happen to the country's energy policies if Miliband wins?
Well, I suppose it's quite scary, but I mean, we are already in an incredibly bad place. We are expecting prices to rise a great deal already over the next 5 years. So it's hard to imagine what Ed Miliband can do that is actually going to make it any worse than that. I mean, he already seems to have pretty much a free hand on energy policy to do what he wants. He's going ahead with renewables, even though it's going to put electricity prices up. He's shutting down the North Sea, which is just madness. So what else is he going to do? I hate to think, but it may be that it's bad enough already.
He'll go. I mean, if he becomes Prime Minister, he'll go further. He sees this as his political legacy, doesn't he?
Well, his political legacy then will be the collapse of the UK economy. And that will be chaos. I mean, we can't sort of hide away from the hard truths here. The policies will lead to very high prices. They will probably lead to the lights going out. They will lead to the closure of manufacturing industry. They will lead to the closure of the hospitality industry. So, if that's what he wants his political legacy to be, well, he's a madman. And, I'm not the first person to say this, but Ed Miliband does seem to be, sort of one step short of barking, really. He is quite crazy. And, the country needs to understand this. We are not doing energy policy in a rational way. It is completely irrational, and it's very, very dangerous. People will die.
And many of the Labour unions also don't support net zero. They're not happy either, especially in manufacturing.
No, absolutely. I mean, we hear that the Unite union in particular is extremely unhappy with what Labour's doing. I mean, their members in the North Sea oil and gas industry must be absolutely raging, and quite rightly so. And there has been talk that they will disaffiliate from the Labour Party, quite correctly. I mean, I think if they've got any sense, they will actually affiliate to the Reform Party, who's are probably their best bet for saving some part of the North Sea. I mean, whether that can happen, if Labour can hold on till 2029, it's hard to imagine that there's going to be a lot of the North Sea and many other industries left. I mean, they will just die. We really need change very quickly.
And just to reiterate that word die, just earlier I interrupted you. You said that you think that these net zero policies will cause people to die. How so?
Yes. So we are looking at blackouts. We do look as if we're going to run out of firm electricity generation capacity by sort of 28, 29. Nobody is interested in building new gas-fired power stations in the UK because they don't make any money, because they don't get to run very often. If the lights go out, as the Spanish found in the spring, people die because people have medical devices that need electricity to function. Okay, their lights were out for less than a day. Once you get past a day, you're in serious trouble, and that's what we're looking at. And the government just doesn't care. They're carrying on with the net zero madness and not addressing the real risk to human life.
And briefly, Andrew, with the clock against us, something I mentioned to Claire Coutinho, Shadow Minister for this area of energy policy as well as equalities. And we were both saying that the issue you got with net zero as well is that this is a national security issue.
Yeah, absolutely. In a world where we are looking as if we may be heading for sort of, conflict, to be deindustrializing is the height of insanity. We have very little manufacturing industry left relevant to defence. Our steel industry is almost gone. So to be carrying on with these policies essentially is to essentially run up the white flag.
Crumbs. Powerful words. Andrew, lovely to have you on the show. Look forward to speaking soon. Andrew Montford is the director of Net Zero Watch. Crowborough is a small East Sussex town which is pushing back against a Home Office decision to send 600 undocumented men to live at an army training camp. It's not a disused barracks, it's an ongoing army training camp. And this is a voice note from Johnny.
Morning, Mark. It's Johnny in the van. Just listening to this lady from Crowborough. Massive sympathy for what they're doing down there. Massive respect, you know. One thing I sort of disagree with her on, though, was when you pressed her on, you know, what should we do with these people? And she said, well, they've got to go somewhere, right? Well, I disagree. They don't need to go nowhere. They need to go back. They need to go back to France, back to where they come from. We owe these people nothing. We've got no obligation to look after these people. So why do we keep saying, well, we've got to put them somewhere? We don't need to put them anywhere. We need to get rid of them. We don't want them in hotels, army barracks, HMOs. We don't want them here. We want them gone. That's what we want. We want them gone. Fair play to the people at Crowborough, though. Keep up a good fight, guys.
Johnny, great voice note. I agree with you. At the moment, you know, they go to a migrant hotel, they go to an army barracks. It's just shifting the deck chairs on the Titanic, isn't it? They shouldn't be here in the first place, and we've got to stop that supply, which means stopping the boats. Johnny, well said. A 5-star voice note. We've got a breaking news story, which is another Tory defects to Reform UK, and it's former Conservative MP Ben Bradley, who I think is ex-military and is an impressive politician who may have designs on going back into the House of Commons, potentially with the turquoise rosette. Ben Bradley has defected to Reform UK. We'll get reaction on that shortly. And is this government wicked? Your calls next.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you go. Let me get my cables straightened out here. A little bit embarrassing. Live radio, live telly. By the way, if you're enjoying the show, lovely to have your company. You can always watch, by the way. Just head to YouTube and hit Talk and you'll find us. This from Michelle. Good morning, Michelle. She says, I don't care about illegal criminal invading spongers who are a threat to our children. I care for our safety and culture. We've had enough, says Michelle. How about this? I live in Tunbridge Wells. That is a bus ride away from Crowborough. I've got visions of busloads of these men coming into town. I will not be going out, says Polly. Paul says, Mark, I keep hearing these people have got to go somewhere in regard to asylum seekers. How about every refugees are welcome half-wit putting 2 up in their homes to start with? We'll soon see a decline in support for illegal immigrants then. That's Paul in Hitchin. You're right, Paul. Hi, Mark, says Peter in Norfolk. Ed Miliband's mission is simple. It's an ego trip. And if he's happy with that, then it's working. Vince says, Mark, it wasn't the Tories that opened the borders or changed laws or signed us up to the ECHR. That was the last Labour government under Blair and Brown. Don't blame any other government. This is what Labour have always wanted and will never stop it, as they started it. And another Michelle regarding Crowborough. I'm in a tiny town and I see these men near my child's school every day. I've written to my MP to be fobbed off, concerns ignored. I'm afraid so. They don't care, Michelle. Let's take a call now if we can. And this is Amanda in Northamptonshire. Good morning, Amanda.
Good morning, Mark.
You get the last word today. What's on your mind?
Lovely. It's more about listening to the teacher earlier talking about the ill discipline of children in schools.
Yes.
When I was 11 years old, my mother sent me to school with a letter written in front of me that gave the headmaster permission to smack me. Now, there'll be sharp intakes of breath all over the place because, oh, my, how very dare you, how very dare you. And I took the letter into school and I handed it over to the headmaster. And the headmaster phoned my mother on that very day and he said, she's delivered the letter. It was low-level stuff, chatting in the classroom,
Sure.
messing about, nothing too dramatic. But my mother was fed up with the school saying, can you please? So she said, right, this is what I'm going to do. I handed the letter over to the headmaster. The headmaster phoned my mum and he said, I can't smack her, don't you? And she said, yes, but she doesn't know that. And to me, that is the crux of it. I don't advocate smacking children. I told the very same story to the teachers of my son's school just a short 10, 15 years ago, and they were absolutely appalled that anything like that could happen. Whereupon I said to them, well, I give you full support. You can, however you administer discipline to my children, you need them to toe the line in the classroom, as the teacher said, so that other children aren't disrupted. Everybody needs to sit and everybody needs to learn. And that's the basis of it. You need to instill discipline in whichever way that works in order that all of the children get the very best education.
Which is why, well, you're so right about this, Amanda, and this is why private schools and faith schools generally perform better academically, because the private sector and faith schools tend to prioritise behaviour.
And don't forget Miss Snuffy, Catherine Burblesing, this Britain's strictest headmistress. Case in point, excellent exam results, works every time.
I completely agree with you there. What a brilliant call. Amanda, thank you for that. I tell a lie because I'm going to squeeze Roger in Oxford in, who gets the last word on this. Roger, welcome to Morning Glory.
Good morning, Mark. Great show. You must have been born a comedian.
I think I was. I probably still am. You'd have to laugh or you'd cry, wouldn't you, Roger?
Definitely. Trying to laugh. Anyhow, if you disagree with anything that the Labour Party say, then they call you a Nazi.
Yeah.
Regarding the drugs that they want to administer to kids...
Yes.
Wasn't that the sort of thing that Mengele, the Nazi, did on kids in the war?
Well, listen, we know that Nazis experimented with medication. Part of that evil regime was just treating human beings like guinea pigs. Do you not think that's a little strong, though, in relation to these puberty blockers, Roger? We both agree that they're wrong for children, but do you not think a Nazi parallel's a little extreme?
Well, not really, because, I mean, as I say, they're trying to administer drugs to kids. What's the difference?
I suppose coercion. I suppose the kids have got parental support in this journey, if you can call it that.
I take your point, but I still feel that there's a bit of a correlation.
Well, I know what you mean. The bottom line is, Roger, it is sinister, isn't it?
Definitely, but everything they're doing is sinister, isn't it?
I can't disagree. Roger, please call me again. Really enjoyed your remarks there at the end of the show, and Amanda as well. Thank you, Roger. Have a good day in lovely Oxford. Live from 10 is the one and only Peter Cardwell. Peter, what have you got for us?
Hello, Mark. Would you say I have an angry face?
No, I think you've got a resting angel face.
A resting angel face. Well, if you don't have a resting angel face, if you're